"The cottage is yours," Melanie said, with the careful brightness people used when handing someone a bag of clothes they had already decided were ugly. Nora looked from her oldest sister to Tessa, then down at the index card between the sugar bowl and Carolyn's chipped ceramic rooster. The card was written in their mother's square, stubborn handwriting. Melanie, house and contents, except personal items listed. Tessa, Vale Catering, van, equipment, active accounts, recipes. Nora, Say Cottage, Old Route 16. Everything there. There was no explanation, no apology, not even one of Carolyn's underlined reminders to be fair. "Say," Nora said. Tessa stopped winding the catering van keys around her finger. 7 years earlier, Nora had walked into this same kitchen and found their mother holding a photograph of a tall, red-haired woman beside a little white cottage. Carolyn had shoved the picture into a drawer so fast she bent it. Who is she? Someone who lost the right to be named in this house. Now the woman's name sat in the middle of Carolyn's last instructions, attached to the only thing left for Nora. "Miriam Say," Melanie said, glancing at an envelope. "Apparently the property transferred to Mom in February." "February?" Nora asked. She was already sick in February. "Which raises several fun questions," Tessa said, none of which she stayed alive to answer. The refrigerator kicked on with a tired shudder. For 9 days, everything in the house had seemed offensively willing to continue. Melanie reached for the index card. Nora put 2 fingers on it first. "So you get the house," she said. "Tessa gets the business, and I get a cottage none of us has seen from a woman Mom wouldn't name." "We've seen it," Tessa said. Nora stared at her. Tessa's expression changed. Not guilt exactly. Something smaller and meaner, like embarrassment, caught without makeup. "When we were young," she said. "Maybe. I don't know. Mom used to take us driving out that way." "She took you driving," Nora said. "I was usually the person you complained was throwing up in the back seat. You did throw up in the back seat. I was 4. You were committed to it." "Tessa," Melanie warned. "What?" "We're all thinking about Mom's mysterious roadside shack. I'm trying to keep the conversation from turning into a seance." Nora took her hand off the card. Melanie immediately squared it with the edge of the table. That was Melanie's gift. She could make an act of possession look like tidying. Around them, Carolyn's kitchen remained crowded with the evidence of the previous week. A foil pan of baked ziti nobody wanted, 3 unopened sympathy cards, a grocery store bouquet shedding yellow pollen beside the sink. Someone from Carolyn's church had brought a pound cake shaped like a tombstone. Tessa had eaten the rounded end and announced that grief needed frosting. Nora had laughed so hard she'd had to sit on the floor. Now, Tessa wouldn't quite look at her. Melanie folded her hands. "The house still has a mortgage, and the business has bills," Tessa added. "Before you start doing the poor Cinderella routine." "I didn't start a routine. You have the face. This is my face. It's Mom's face when the waiter said they were out of baked potatoes." Nora pressed her lips together. That made it worse. Tessa gave a short laugh, then looked stricken by the sound of it. For a few seconds they were simply 3 sisters at their mother's table, each waiting for Carolyn to come in and correct the way they were grieving. Melanie broke first. "The point is, none of this is as simple as it looks." Nora looked toward the narrow hallway. Her suitcase stood at the bottom of the stairs, still half-packed from the funeral. It had been half-packed for most of the last 3 years. She kept her motel uniforms rolled in the lower compartment, and everything else in the closet of Carolyn's spare room. Carolyn had called it temporary until the word became impolite. "The cottage has no mortgage," Melanie continued, "according to the papers we found. What condition is it in? We don't know. Running water? We don't know. Heat? Nora. I'm asking because it is July right now, but winter has been scheduled." Tessa tossed the van keys onto the table. "I drove past it yesterday." Both sisters turned to her. "What?" Tessa said. "I wanted to know." "And?" Nora asked. "It has walls." Melanie closed her eyes. "4 of them," Tessa added, "as far as I could tell. You could have stopped. There was a truck behind me. Was the truck in charge of your brakes? It's on a narrow road. There's a ditch. Also, it looked haunted." Nora stared at the recipe box on the counter. It was yellow tin with painted strawberries, dented at one corner from the time Carolyn threw it at a mouse. The mouse escaped. The box had not. Her mother had sorted 38 years of raising daughters onto a single card and tucked it behind slow cooker meats. "When do you want me out?" Nora asked. Melanie's posture stiffened. Don't do that. Do what? Make me the villain for needing to move forward. I asked a date. This is still your home. Tessa studied the ceiling. Nora waited. Melanie rubbed a faint water ring on the table with her thumb. Craig and I talked. We're going to move in while we repair a few things. We have to list our condo first. There's no immediate rush. Craig had been measuring the living room with his eyes during the post-funeral luncheon. How immediate? Nora asked. A couple of weeks. Mel, I said there's no rush. 2 weeks is a rush if your other house has 4 walls and a ditch. Tessa reached for the cake, found the box empty, and seemed personally betrayed. Melanie pushed back from the table. I am not arguing about this today. Mom was very clear. Nora picked up the index card. Mom was clear that I got the cottage. She wasn't clear that the cottage was livable. She knew you'd be okay. There it was. The phrase Carolyn had used whenever Nora's needs were less convenient than someone else's. Melanie needs me right now. You'll be okay. Tessa has the event tomorrow. You'll be okay. I can't have both of us falling apart, honey. You're the one who'll be okay. Nora slipped the card into her purse. Do you have the keys? She asked. Tessa's hand moved to her jacket pocket. Of course you do, Nora said. I found them in Mom's dresser. You went through her dresser? We all went through her dresser. You took things out. I took keys. Melanie took the house. Melanie stood so quickly the table shook. The ceramic rooster tipped, wobbled, and settled. All three watched it. Tessa exhaled through her nose. That bird has survived more family conflict than we have. She pulled a brass ring from her pocket. It held 2 ordinary keys and 1 long black key with a rounded head. A faded wooden tag hung beneath them. Bellwether, it said in tiny blue letters, with a space between the words. Nora held out her hand. Tessa didn't drop the keys into it right away. You don't have to stay there. I apparently can't stay here. You can stay with me. Tessa lived above a nail salon in a 1-bedroom apartment that smelled permanently of acetone and garlic from the restaurant next door. On what? Nora asked. Your decorative ladder? It holds blankets. It leans against a wall. It's rustic. It's a ladder, Tess. Tessa finally gave her the keys. Her fingers closed around Nora's for 1 brief second. Call me before you sleep there, she said quietly. Just so I know it didn't eat you. The motel gave Nora 4 evening shifts a week when occupancy was high and 2 when it wasn't. This was a 2-shift week. She spent the next morning behind the front desk, watching a fly repeatedly fail to understand the lobby window. Her manager, Daryl, ate sunflower seeds from a paper cup and examined the cottage address on Nora's phone. Old 16, he said. That route gets hospital traffic. Is hospital traffic different from regular traffic? More scrubs, worse coffee. Useful. You buying a place? Inheriting. Daryl's eyebrows rose. Look at you. You haven't seen it. Does it have land? It has a ditch. A ditch is land with ambition. She almost smiled. Daryl zoomed in on the map. This is past Morrow Tire, before the feed store that sells those giant concrete chickens. Why do they sell giant concrete chickens? Why does anybody sell anything? Someone bought the first one. Nora folded a motel invoice into thirds. Her checking account held $912. Carolyn's final month had emptied most of what Nora had saved, not because her mother asked, but because prescriptions appeared, groceries disappeared, and one person in a house had to notice when the electric bill turned pink. Can I pick up Saturday? She asked. I gave it to Levon. Sunday? Levon. Is Levon sleeping here? She's got twins in college. Nora looked at him. Adult twins, Daryl said defensively. Very expensive adults. I wasn't judging. You've got the baked potato face. At 3, Nora drove back to Carolyn's house and packed what still felt like borrowing. Clothes, toiletries, the blue quilt from the spare bed, her mother's old flashlight. She stood in front of the refrigerator longer than necessary, then took the baked ziti because grief was one thing, but wasting an entire pan of cheese was another. Melanie arrived as Nora carried the suitcase to her car. You're leaving now? You said a couple of weeks. I'm giving you a head start on moving forward. Oh, stop! Nora opened the trunk. Melanie crossed the driveway in sandals that made small, irritated slaps. I didn't mean you had to go today. I know. Then why are you acting like this? Nora fitted the suitcase beside the ziti. How am I acting? Like we did something to you? The August heat pressed between them. A sprinkler ticked across the lawn next door, flashing briefly in the sun. You didn't, Nora said. Mom did. Melanie's face softened, and that was somehow worse. She trusted you, she said, with the thing nobody else wanted. You don't know that. Did you want it? Melanie looked toward the house. Nora nodded. Right? That doesn't mean it has no value. It means you didn't need to know whether it did before choosing. Melanie's mouth tightened. I didn't choose. Mom left instructions, and you followed them because they worked out beautifully for you. The house needs work. The foundation has a crack. The upstairs bathroom leaked into the dining room last year, in case you forgot. I didn't forget. I was holding the bucket. That is exactly what you do. You keep a private list of every bucket you ever held. Nora shut the trunk harder than she intended. Melanie flinched. Neither apologized. Old Route 16 began where the newer highway curved east. The pavement narrowed, the shoulder disappeared, and honeysuckle crowded the guardrails. Nora passed Morrow Tire, a shuttered produce stand, and 3 concrete chickens in descending sizes. The smallest wore a red, white, and blue ribbon. 10 miles later, she saw the cottage. It sat close enough to the road that a careless driver could have delivered the mail through the front window. The siding had once been white. A brick chimney leaned slightly away from the roof, as if reconsidering its involvement. Weeds swallowed the walkway, but the porch had been swept. Nora slowed. Behind her, a pickup appeared around the bend. Oh, sure, she muttered. Now there's a truck. She missed the driveway, went half a mile before finding a place to turn, then came back with Tessa's excuse lodged annoyingly in her throat. The black key opened the front door. Warm, stale air met her. The first room held 2 wooden tables, 6 chairs, and a counter facing a wide window beside the road. Blue mugs hung from hooks overhead. On the counter sat an old brass service bell. Nora touched it. The sound was bright and startling. A wall of postcards fluttered in the breeze from the open door. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They showed desserts, mountains, hospital parking lots, roadside attractions, ordinary towns. Thank you for the bed. Thank you for Tuesday coffee. Made it home safe. She was reading one signed, Simply Grateful, when someone knocked on the doorframe behind her. Nora spun around. A silver-haired woman in purple scrubs stood on the porch holding an empty thermos. She looked past Nora at the bare counter, then up at the hanging mugs. For a moment, disappointment crossed her face with the intimacy of recognition. You're not Miriam, she said. No. The woman studied Nora more closely. Then she lowered the thermos. Oh, she said. You must be Carolyn's girl. Nora tightened her hand around the postcard. Which girl? The woman's gaze moved over her face with unnerving patience. The youngest. How do you know there's a youngest? Because Carolyn talked about you. The cottage seemed to tilt slightly toward the road. A truck passed, shaking the blue mugs on their hooks. The woman lifted her empty thermos. Before we go any further, is there coffee, or am I about to have a much less charitable personality? I just got here, I can see that. Can you? You rang the bell. I touched it. Miriam didn't allow recreational bell ringing. Nora looked at the brass dome beneath her fingers. The woman stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Up close, she was sturdily built, with silver hair cropped around her ears and purple reading glasses resting on top of her head. An identification badge hung from her scrub shirt. Alma Reed, Home Health Services. Alma set the thermos on the counter, then stopped. Her hand went to her mouth. Nora followed her gaze. Behind the coffee urn was a small glass jar filled with folded slips of paper. A strip of masking tape on the front read, Alma, no money, no argument. Alma picked up the jar and turned it in her hands. She left that there, she said. Miriam? No, the other invisible woman who ran the place. I never met her. Alma looked at her. You sure? Nora thought of the road trips Tessa half remembered, then of rosemary soap without knowing why. Not that I remember? Well, Alma returned the jar precisely where she had found it. Memory likes to act more dependable than it is. Did you know my mother? A little. You knew her enough to know me. You favor her around the mouth. That's what people say when I'm unhappy. It's what people say when you're trying not to ask 12 questions at once. Nora set the postcard back on the wall, though she could not remember where it had been pinned. Did Carolyn come here? Alma glanced toward the road. The pause answered before she did. Sometimes, Alma said. How often? Sometimes is already more than I was planning to say. Why? Because none of that was mine. My mother is dead. Miriam is dead. I'm standing in their cottage with a brass bell I'm apparently not qualified to touch. At what point does some of it become mine? Alma's expression softened, but not enough to be satisfying. You're right, she said. That's a hard place to stand. It was the sort of answer Carolyn used to give when she wanted credit for kindness without changing her position. Nora picked up Alma's thermos. Where's the coffee? Alma blinked. If you're going to avoid my questions, you can at least show me how the machine works. There's a regular pot under the counter. The big urn is for mornings when Miriam had room guests. Nora crouched. The lower cabinets held coffee filters, sacks of dried beans, a jar of sugar packets, and 4 cans of coffee. 3 had expired. Alma took the 4th from her. This one's fine. It expired in March. Coffee doesn't expire, it gives up. The faucet coughed when Nora turned it. A thin stream of rusty water ran for 3 seconds, then stopped. Alma watched it with no surprise. Pump loses its prime, she said. Of course it does. Breaker box is in the pantry. Sometimes flipping the switch wakes it up. Sometimes. Other times, Walt has to swear at it. Who's Walt? Morrow Tire? The giant chicken man? He doesn't sell them. He bought one. His wife bought the other 2 to make it look intentional. Alma followed Nora into the pantry. Shelves climbed to the ceiling, filled with empty jars, canned tomatoes, folded dish towels, and labels in several different kinds of handwriting. The breaker box was concealed behind a calendar from the previous year. Nora opened it. Which one? Pump. That seems suspiciously easy. Everything gets one act of mercy. Nora flipped the switch. Somewhere beneath the floor, a motor grumbled. The faucet spat again, this time producing water the color of weak tea. Alma leaned against the counter. Let it run. Does it become drinking water? It becomes clearer. That is not the same sentence. They waited. Traffic hummed past the cottage in uneven waves, then vanished, leaving cicadas loud in the pines. The water slowly cleared. Nora washed the pot twice before making coffee. Alma took her first sip with her eyes closed. That's terrible. It came from a can that had not yet given up. Maybe it was depressed. You're welcome. I didn't say I wouldn't drink it. Alma filled her thermos, then placed $4 beneath the sugar jar. You don't have to pay, Nora said. Alma pointed to the labeled jar behind the urn. That says no money. It doesn't say no paying. That makes no sense. It did to her. Nora wanted to ask again about Carolyn, but Alma was already screwing on the thermos cap. Wait. Alma's shoulders lowered slightly. My mother came here while she was sick? Yes. When? Thursday afternoons, mostly. Near the end, whenever she could manage. Thursday afternoons were when Carolyn said Tessa drove her to physical therapy. When Tessa was unavailable, Nora drove her, but Carolyn never let Nora accompany her inside. She insisted Nora use the hour for herself. Nora had sat in pharmacy parking lots eating granola bars and feeling guilty for enjoying the quiet. She lied about therapy. I wouldn't know. You know she came here? Yes. To see Miriam? Alma looked toward the postcard wall. She didn't come for the coffee. Were they friends? That's another question. You haven't answered the first one. I answered more than I meant to. Alma moved toward the door. Nora followed. How did Miriam know my mother? Alma stopped on the porch, one hand resting on the thermos handle. Carolyn asked people here not to discuss her, she said. Not with her family. Miriam made the same request. Why? You'll have to decide how angry you want to be before you find that out. That's a ridiculous thing to say. It probably is. Did my mother hurt her? Alma's mouth pressed into a line. They hurt each other. That's not rare enough to be useful. She descended the steps. Alma. The woman turned. Why did you come today? I've been working the eastern route since April. Drove past this morning and saw the porch swept. Thought someone had opened up again. No one has. Alma nodded toward the coffee in her hand. Could have fooled me. She walked to a dusty sedan parked along the edge of the driveway. Before getting in, she called, Don't drink from the kitchen tap until Walt looks at the filter. You just let me make your coffee with it. I've survived worse. She drove away. Nora stood on the porch until the sedan disappeared around the bend. Then she went inside and poured the remaining coffee down the sink. Her phone had 3 missed calls from Tessa. She called back. Are you alive? Tessa asked without greeting. Define alive. Breathing without assistance. Yes. Bleeding? No. Ghost activity? Undetermined. Nora returned to the front room. The afternoon sun made every scratch in the floor visible. Someone came by, she said. A neighbor, a woman named Alma. She knew Mom. Silence. You still there? Yes. Did you know Mom came here? The silence changed. Nora sat at one of the tables. Tessa, not until recently. How recently? After she got sick. You drove her here. I drove her everywhere. She told me she was going to physical therapy. Sometimes she was, and sometimes she wasn't. Tessa exhaled into the phone. Behind her, metal clanged, and a man said something Nora couldn't make out. Where are you? Nora asked. At the storage unit. Mom apparently kept 6 crates of fondue forks because she believed the 70s might come back with a vengeance. Answer me. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be festive. I drove her there twice, maybe 3 times. To see Miriam? I never met Miriam. You didn't go inside? Mom told me not to. And you listened? Occasionally I experimented with respecting her wishes. Nora looked at the postcards. Didn't you ask who lived here? Of course I asked. She said an old friend. She refused to name that woman for years, and you accepted old friend? Nora, she was dying. The words struck with more force because Tessa said them plainly. Nora ran her thumb along a groove in the tabletop. She didn't want another interrogation every time she got into a car, Tessa continued. She wanted me to take the turn after the concrete chickens and leave her alone for 2 hours. So I did. You never told me. She asked me not to. She asked everyone not to. Maybe that should tell you something. It tells me she didn't trust us. No. It tells you she didn't want us involved. How is that better? Tessa didn't answer. Outside, another truck rattled the windows. I have to deal with the refrigeration unit, Tessa said. It's making a noise like a lawnmower swallowed a spoon. Okay, I'll come out tomorrow. You don't have to. I know. The call ended before either could make the next sentence worse. Nora carried her suitcase upstairs. The staircase was narrow enough that she had to turn sideways at the landing. 2 bedrooms faced each other across a short hall. One contained a brass bed, a washstand, and folded towels stacked with military precision. The other had 2 twin beds and a row of hooks beside the door. Each hook held a small cloth bag embroidered with a number. The bathroom tap produced a grudging stream. The toilet flushed once and then continued running with the stubbornness of someone pretending not to hear instructions. Nora opened the windows. She shook dust from the quilt. She tested every lamp, finding 2 that worked and 1 that buzzed ominously. She dragged the baked ziti downstairs and ate it cold at the counter because she could not make herself trust the stove. As darkness settled, the road changed character. Daytime traffic thinned. Headlights moved across the ceiling in long, pale bars, briefly illuminating the walls before sliding away. The cottage creaked whenever a truck passed, but in the spaces between vehicles, the quiet felt deeper than silence in town. Nora called Melanie. I'm here, she said when her sister answered. At the cottage? No, Melanie. I broke into a different abandoned building to create suspense. Is it safe? I don't know. Then don't stay. And go where? Another pause. Nora regretted the question as soon as she heard Melanie's careful inhale. You can come back tonight, Melanie said. Tonight. I didn't mean it like that. Good night, Mel. Nora, she ended the call. The pump stopped working at 10:17. Nora was standing in the bathroom with shampoo in her hair when the water gave one weak gasp and vanished. She waited, eyes closed, counting to 20 as though patience might be mechanically useful. Nothing. She wrapped herself in a towel, went downstairs, and flipped the breaker. The pump groaned, knocked twice, then fell silent. Walt, she said to the dark pantry, I hope your swearing is exceptional. She used bottled water from her car to rinse her hair over the kitchen sink. Afterward, too tired to climb the stairs, she sat on the floor beneath the postcards. The lowest row was mostly thank you notes, free postcards from hospitals, a photograph of a snow-covered highway, a card showing the world's largest ball of twine. One envelope had slipped behind a baseboard. Nora pulled it free. It was unsealed and empty, addressed in Carolyn's handwriting to Miriam Say at the cottage. No stamp, no return address. Nora turned it over. On the back, her mother had written 4 words. I came. You weren't here. Nora read the sentence until the handwriting stopped looking like words. I came. You weren't here. It sounded accusing. It sounded frightened. It sounded like something Carolyn might have written after showing up late to a doctor's appointment, except her mother had never left notes that admitted she had wanted anyone badly enough to be disappointed. Nora slid the envelope into her purse behind the index card. She did not know why she hid it. There was no one in the cottage to hide it from. Upstairs, the toilet was still running. She removed the tank lid, stared at its dark machinery, and pressed down every part that appeared willing to move. The water stopped with a gurgle. One successful repair, she whispered. The handle fell off. She set it on the washstand and went to bed. At 6:12, a truck changed gears outside her window with such violence that Nora sat upright, convinced the cottage was being dragged down the highway. By 6:20, someone was knocking on the front door. She came downstairs in yesterday's jeans and one sock. A broad man with a gray mustache stood on the porch carrying a red toolbox. He wore a work shirt with Morrow tire stitched over the pocket and held a foam cup beneath his chin while he studied the chimney. You Nora? He asked. Who wants to know? Alma. Alma wants to know if I'm Nora? Alma wants me to look at the pump. I want to know whether I'm at the right house. Nora opened the door wider. Walt? That depends. You selling anything? No. Then Walt. He stepped inside, wiped his boots on the mat, and looked around the front room without moving his head much. The mustache lowered. Haven't seen it this empty in a while, he said. You've been here recently? Sunday. Nora thought of the swept porch. You cleaned outside. Miriam hated leaves gathering against the steps. Miriam's dead. I'm aware. Then I don't think she's grading the porch. Walt took a long drink from his cup. You have Carolyn's morning disposition, so I've been told. Where's the pump? Alma said you'd know. Alma believes I know everything because I once fixed her air conditioner by plugging it in. She left out that detail. She does. He went through the pantry and opened a square hatch Nora had assumed was part of the floor. Beneath it, wooden steps disappeared into darkness. I'm not going down there, Nora said. Good. Narrow fit. I meant because it looks like a grave. That too. Walt switched on a flashlight and descended. Metal scraped. A pipe knocked. Then came a sustained sequence of muttering that confirmed Alma's description of his method. Nora found the least expired coffee and filled the kettle with bottled water. What'd you do to the coffee pot? Walt called from below. Nothing. Where is it? Under the counter. Then that's something. Do you want coffee or commentary? Coffee? She made 2 cups. When Walt emerged, his shirt was streaked with dirt, and he held a cylindrical filter that looked packed with river mud. That water came through this? Nora asked. Some of it. I rinsed my hair with that. Hair still attached, not a reassuring standard. Pump's old but alive. Pressure switch stuck. Filter should have been changed in May. What does that cost? The filter? $38. Nora relaxed slightly. Pressure tanks waterlogged. She stopped relaxing. How much? With labor, around $6.50 if I can use the same fittings. Nora stared at him over the coffee. Walt blew across his cup. That expression won't make it cheaper. It has historically failed to make anything cheaper. I can get the pump running today. Might go 2 days, might go 2 weeks. Can you make it go until I have $650? If I could make machinery respect checking accounts, I'd own more than a tire shop and 3 embarrassing chickens. He disappeared into the pantry again. Nora stood at the wide front window. Morning traffic had begun. Nurses in scrub tops, pickup trucks with coolers strapped into their beds, a delivery van, 2 motorcycles. Most passed without slowing. One woman in a small blue car turned her head toward the cottage and nearly drifted over the center line. People keep looking in, Nora called. Probably saw your coffee. They can't smell it from the road. You made the bad kind. They might. A metallic snap came from below. The pump shuddered to life. Walt ran the kitchen faucet until the water cleared, then wrapped the dirty filter in a grocery bag. Don't drink it until the new one's in, he said. I'll bring one this afternoon. I can come get it. I have to pass here anyway. Why? He looked toward the porch. It's Thursday, he said, as if that explained anything. What happens Thursday? Used to be stew. Nora leaned against the sink. People came here for lunch. Some did. Some took food with them. Was this a restaurant? No. It has tables, a serving window, a coffee urn, and apparently scheduled stew. Still wasn't a restaurant. Then what was it? Walt considered the question. A place that was open. That is not an answer. It's the one I've got. He carried the old filter outside. Nora followed him to a faded green pickup parked beside her car. "Did you know Carolyn?" she asked. Walt put the toolbox in the bed. "Yes." "How?" "Through Miriam. That tells me nothing. It tells you exactly one thing. Did my mother come here before she got sick?" He looked at her then. His eyes were pale blue, surprisingly gentle beneath thick gray brows. "I didn't keep attendance. Everyone keeps acting like she took out a newspaper ad asking you not to speak to me." "No," she asked Miriam, and Miriam asked the rest of you. "Something like that? Why are you still obeying them?" Walt shut the tailgate. "Habit," he said. "And because people who spend years being talked about sometimes deserve one place where they aren't." Which one of them was being talked about? His gaze shifted briefly to her mouth, and she knew he saw Carolyn there too. "Both," he said. Tessa arrived at 9 in the catering van, its refrigeration unit producing a sharp metallic rattle. Walt listened as she pulled in. "Spoon and a lawnmower," that's what she said. "Fan bearing. Is that expensive?" "Everything with a bearing is expensive." He raised 2 fingers to Tessa and drove away. Tessa climbed out wearing shorts, sunglasses, and Carolyn's old catering apron over a black tank top. Vale Catering was embroidered across the chest in red. Nora hated seeing it on her. Then she hated herself for that. "I brought supplies," Tessa said, opening the van's side door. Inside were paper towels, bleach, trash bags, rubber gloves, 2 bottles of wine, and a cheesecake. "The essentials," Nora said. The cheesecake was in Mom's catering freezer. "It has a date on it, but I believe dates are an oppressive social construct. You shouldn't be in food service. I'm beginning to agree. They carried everything inside." Tessa stopped under the postcard wall. "There were this many? You remember them?" "Not this many." She touched a card showing a beach at sunset. "I remember drawing on one and Mom getting mad." "How old were you?" "Old enough to know better, according to Mom." That could mean anywhere from 3 to 40. Nora watched her scan the room. "You remember the cottage. Pieces. But you didn't remember where it was when I asked. I said maybe. You said Mom used to drive us this way." Tessa dropped her cleaning gloves onto the counter. "Do you want help, or do you want to depose me? I want you to stop giving me half an answer and acting like the missing half is my personality problem." Tessa took off her sunglasses. "I remember this room with more people in it," she said. "I remember red hair. I remember you asleep in a laundry basket under that window." Nora looked toward the wide front window. "I was in a laundry basket. It had blankets. That does not improve the sentence. You kept rolling into the side. Melanie said you were defective. That sounds like Melanie. Mom heard her and made her sit on the porch for an hour. That does not sound like Mom." "It did back then." Nora opened her purse and took out the envelope. Tessa recognized the handwriting immediately. Her face lost its teasing edge. "Where did you find that?" "Behind the baseboard." Tessa read the 4 words on the back. "What do you think it means?" Nora asked. "I think she came and Miriam wasn't here." "Thank you, detective." "You asked what I think." "Why would she write it on an envelope and leave it here?" "Maybe she didn't have paper." "There are postcards covering an entire wall." Tessa turned the envelope over. "It was never mailed." "No." "Maybe she put it under the door." "And then what?" "How would I know?" Nora took it back. "She came here before." So this wasn't only something she did while she was sick." Tessa picked up the bleach. "You already knew that. She used to bring us, without telling us why. Mom didn't tell anyone why she did anything. She just pursed her lips until everybody got tired. They cleaned for 3 hours. The work gave them somewhere to put the irritation." Tessa attacked the stove with baking soda. Nora washed mugs. They filled 4 trash bags with spoiled pantry goods and discovered 11 unopened jars of cinnamon, none purchased in the same decade. At noon, Tessa cut the cheesecake with a bread knife. "You should sell," she said too casually. Nora set down her fork. "That didn't take long. I don't mean today. I mean once you know what needs fixing." "You mean once I know how bad it is. The roof alone could cost 20 grand. "Did Melanie send you?" "No. Did you volunteer?" "I drove out here with bleach and dairy. You also brought Mom's opinion." Tessa scraped cheesecake from her plate. "Mom left you property, Nora. She didn't sentence you to it. She left me a building with no reliable water. And she left me a van that sounds like cutlery in a garbage disposal. You wanted the business. I wanted it when Mom was alive and could tell me why the Parker wedding order says no green under any circumstances. There are 6 kinds of green napkins in storage, Nora. 6. Despite herself, Nora laughed. Tessa pointed the bread knife at her. You think that's funny until someone named Mrs. Parker starts screaming about sage. A shadow moved across the front window. The porch bell rang. Both sisters turned. A woman wearing navy scrubs stood outside with a duffel bag at her feet. She pressed her face closer to the glass, saw them, and smiled with visible relief. Tessa looked at Nora. Did you open? No. The bell rang again. Nora went to the door. The woman shifted the duffel onto her shoulder. Please tell me the upstairs room is available. The motel near the hospital wants $130 a night, and their hallway smells like wet carpet. Nora thought of her $912, the $38 filter, the $650 tank. Behind her, Tessa whispered, It does smell like wet carpet. Nora opened the door wider. The water's unreliable, she said. The woman considered that. How unreliable? Nora looked toward the pantry, where the pump gave a low, uncertain knock. Apparently it respects honesty, she said. But not checking accounts. The woman laughed. That's more personality than I usually get with a room. She introduced herself as Janelle Ortiz and explained that she drew blood for a mobile laboratory serving 3 rural hospitals. Her schedule had changed with 2 days' notice. She needed a bed through Sunday and had already rejected a room above a bar where the owner promised the live music became very soothing after midnight. I won't be here much, she said. I leave at 4:30 in the morning. That sounds medically unnecessary, Tessa said. So does most of my job before sunrise. Nora stepped aside. Janelle carried her duffel into the front room and looked around. Her expression shifted when she saw the postcard wall. Oh, she said, this is still the same. You've stayed here before? Nora asked. Twice. Years ago. Janelle pointed upstairs. Miriam had 2 rooms. They're still there. Is she around? Nora hesitated. She died, Tessa said. Janelle lowered the duffel. When? This winter, Nora said. I'm sorry. I didn't know. The sympathy landed strangely. Nora had not known Miriam either, yet she felt responsible for receiving it. I'm Nora, she said. Miriam left the cottage to my mother. My mother left it to me. Janelle glanced between the sisters, perhaps recognizing that the sentence contained more trouble than Nora intended. Tessa said. I inherited the loud van. The refrigeration unit outside punctuated her introduction with a metallic shriek. Janelle nodded. Memorable. Upstairs, Nora showed her the brass bed. The quilt was clean, but the room still smelled closed up. Tessa opened both windows while Nora checked beneath the bed for anything that might have established legal residence. Bathrooms across the hall, Nora said. The pump is currently working. I can't promise it will continue believing in itself. Janelle set her bag on the chair. How much? Nora had no idea. Miriam had probably charged something. $30? $50? The motel charged $130 because Daryl believed patterned bedspreads could conceal a broad range of disappointments. $45? Nora said. Tessa made a small sound behind her. Janelle mistook it for concern. That's fine. Per night, Nora added, before Tessa could volunteer breakfast, laundry, and a commemorative mug. Do you take cards? Nora did not. Cash is fine, Janelle said. I'll pay each morning in case the plumbing makes other plans. Back downstairs, Tessa cornered Nora beside the refrigerator. You charged her $45. You inhaled like I'd asked for a kidney. Miriam charged $32, and that included breakfast. How do you know? Tessa stared at the refrigerator handle. You've stayed here too, Nora said. No, you know the price. Mom paid once. For who? For us. Nora waited. Tessa wiped a streak from the refrigerator door with her thumb. We lost power for 4 days after that big summer storm. Melanie stayed with a friend. Mom brought you and me here. I don't remember that. You were maybe 5. Did Miriam stay here? She cooked. I assume that means yes. Did Mom introduce her? No. What did you call her? Tessa thought about it. The red-haired lady. That's cold, even for us. She didn't tell us her name. Neither of them did. Nora tried to picture Carolyn accepting a room from the woman she refused to name. She could see her mother carrying grocery bags, telling Tessa not to touch anything, smoothing Nora's hair with the same hand she used to close doors. "Why didn't you tell me this yesterday?" "Because I remembered the laundry basket. The storm came back just now." "Convenient." Tessa picked up her sunglasses. "Memory is not a deposition, Nora. That sounds like something you heard Alma say." "Who's Alma?" "The woman who knows more than she admits." That could describe everyone over 60 who attended Mom's funeral. Alma wasn't at Mom's funeral. Tessa looked toward the postcard wall. Maybe she wasn't invited. Walt returned with the new filter while Janelle was testing the shower. The pipe screamed overhead. He glanced up. "You have company." "One guest." "You open?" "No." "Guest says otherwise." She needed a room. Most guests do. Nora paid him $38 for the filter and watched him write "paid" on the invoice with a pencil, no longer than his thumb. "You're not charging labor?" she asked, "for screwing in a filter? You came here twice. Second trip was Thursday. What does that mean?" He tapped the invoice with the pencil. "Used to get stew. There is no stew." "Then I miscalculated." Tessa leaned into the pantry. "Can you look at my refrigeration unit?" "Sure. How much?" "Depends how long I have to look. Your business practices are unsettling. Yours makes noise from inside a van." They went outside. Nora stood in the kitchen listening to Walt rave the refrigeration unit and Tessa object to his first estimate. Upstairs, the shower shut off. The pump continued running. For that moment, the cottage worked. Nora found a notebook in her suitcase and wrote down $45, then subtracted the filter, $7. She added 3 more nights if Janelle stayed, $142. Then she remembered electricity, cleaning supplies, coffee, and whatever the toilet handle cost. She crossed out the number and closed the notebook. Janelle came downstairs with damp hair and a relieved expression. "Water pressure's better than the hospital." "That seems like a low standard. You'd be surprised." She paid Nora with 2 20s and a 5. The bills were warm from her wallet. Nora placed them in an empty jelly jar beneath the counter. For several seconds, she simply looked at them. The cottage had earned money. Not enough money. Not even close. But the amount existed where nothing had existed an hour ago. Tessa came back inside, rubbing grease from her fingers. "Fan bearing," she said bitterly. "Everything with a bearing is expensive. He already told you that? He has themes." Walt removed the damaged part, promised to locate a replacement, and instructed Tessa not to run the refrigeration unit unless she wanted it to finish dying loudly. That created a problem. Tessa had a luncheon order due the next day. 50 boxed meals, each with chicken salad, fruit, and something identified in Carolyn's notes only as the good crackers. "There are 4 cases of crackers," Tessa said, staring into the van. "None say good. Maybe the bad crackers know what they did. This isn't funny, it's slightly funny. The chicken has to stay cold." Nora looked at the cottage refrigerator. "No, I didn't ask." "You looked. I have eyes. They go places. My refrigerator is not becoming an annex of Vale Catering." Tessa's face tightened. "Our refrigerator." Nora turned. Tessa corrected herself. "Mom's refrigerator. You know what I mean." "No, I don't. It came from the catering kitchen. I recognized the dent. Then Mom moved it here, which means it's business equipment. She left everything here to me, and the business equipment to me." They stood on opposite sides of the counter, the refrigerator humming between them. Janelle quietly picked up her duffel. "I'm going to put on headphones." She went upstairs. Tessa lowered her voice. "I need 1 shelf overnight. You have coolers. I have 50 meals. You said the business was the valuable thing. I said it had bills. You wanted it. Yes, I wanted it." Tessa's eyes flashed. "I spent 14 years building it with her. That doesn't mean I know how to run it 9 days after she died." Nora looked away. On the postcard wall, the bright places blurred together. "1 shelf," she said, "and you pay me." Tessa let out a disbelieving laugh. "For using Mom's refrigerator?" "For using my electricity in my cottage." "How much?" $45. That's a room rate. Storage doesn't use towels." Tessa folded her arms. 30, she said. 38. Why 38? I bought a filter. You are a vicious little capitalist. You left me real estate. 35. Fine. They shook hands because neither trusted the other not to alter the agreement emotionally. The work took them into evening. Tessa returned with tubs of cooked chicken, celery, grapes, and a crate of assorted crackers. Nora helped assemble boxes at one of the front tables, while Janelle slept upstairs with a towel pushed against the bottom of her door to block the kitchen light. Carolyn's notes were useless in the way only familiar instructions could be. Add enough dressing, not too many grapes. Use the bowl from the hall cabinet. What bowl? Tessa demanded. There are 7 bowls, the one from the hall cabinet. Mom moved everything. She knew she was dying and still wrote like she'd be standing beside me. Nora chopped celery more slowly. Tessa pressed her palms against the table. I'm sorry. For what? I don't know. That sentence. Okay. They worked without speaking for several minutes. At 10, Tessa held up 2 cracker packets, butter rounds or wheat rectangles. Wheat rectangles look responsible. That's what I thought. The butter rounds taste better. Tessa groaned. This is why she did the shopping. After the van was loaded with coolers and the chicken salad occupied one shelf, Tessa paid Nora $35. She folded the bills twice before putting them in Nora's hand. Don't enjoy this, she said. I'm going to frame them. Tomorrow, I'll bring the toilet handle. Nora followed her to the porch. At the van, Tessa paused. If this place starts eating you, say something before you disappear into it. I've been here one day. You've already rented a room and become a refrigeration landlord. You're welcome. Tessa looked as if she wanted to hug her. Instead, she opened the van door. Lock up, she said. Janelle left before dawn. Nora heard careful footsteps on the stairs, the front door closing, then a car pulling onto the road. When she came down at 6, $45 lay beside the coffee pot beneath an upside-down blue mug. Nora made coffee with bottled water. At 6:20, Alma arrived. At 6:30, Walt came in carrying the replacement toilet handle. Neither asked whether the cottage was open. Alma turned the sign beside the window from closed to coffee, and Walt began unscrewing the toilet handle packaging with his pocket knife. You can't do that, Nora said. Alma looked at the sign. Why not? Because I'm not running a coffee shop. Good. Miriam wasn't either. Nora poured 3 cups because arguing without caffeine felt irresponsible. A woman in green scrubs stopped on her way to the hospital. Then a man driving a bread truck. Alma showed Nora where Miriam kept paper cups, and Walt found a fresh box of lids in the pantry. By 7:15, the jelly jar held $19. At 7:20, someone asked if there was food. Nora thought of the pantry shelves and Carolyn's freezer meals. She thought of Thursday's stew, of Tessa's chicken salad, and of the $900 shrinking in her account. I can make something tonight, she said. Maybe. Alma raised an eyebrow. What kind of something? Nora heard Carolyn's voice before she answered. Chicken stew. The room went quiet. Walt looked down into his coffee. Alma set her cup carefully on the counter. Carolyn's chicken stew? Yes, that was Miriam's recipe. Nora stared at her. You said you knew my mother a little. I did. Alma's gaze moved toward the stove. I never said Miriam did. Nora gripped the coffee pot by its plastic handle. How long did they know each other? Alma's face closed. No, Nora said. You don't get to drop something like that and return to your coffee. The woman in green scrubs studied the lid on her paper cup. The bread truck driver suddenly found the postcard wall fascinating. Walt folded the empty toilet handle package into a narrow strip. I should get to the shop. You should sit down, Nora said. He sat. It surprised all of them. Alma pulled out a chair and lowered herself into it. They'd known each other a long time. How long? Before Miriam moved here. When was that? 27 years ago. Nora did the arithmetic. Carolyn would have been 32. Melanie was already alive. Tessa too. Nora wasn't. You said my mother came for Thursday's stew. Sometimes. Did she cook it? Miriam cooked. Carolyn criticized. That sounds right. Then Carolyn started bringing her own pot. Said Miriam cut the carrots too thick. That also sounds right. Walt rubbed his mustache to conceal something that might have been a smile. Nora set down the coffee pot. Why did Mom tell us it was her recipe? Alma looked mildly puzzled. Was it important that she invented it? It's important that she lied. People don't always remember where a thing becomes theirs. That's a lovely sentence. It's also not an answer. No, Alma agreed. It's not. The bread truck driver placed $2 beside the jelly jar and edged toward the door. Nora pointed the coffee pot at him. You don't have to leave. I have bread. You had bread when you came in. Now it feels urgent. He escaped. The woman in green scrubs followed, taking a second paper cup she had not paid for. Nora let her go. Did Miriam teach her to cook? Nora asked. Yes. When? Alma pressed both hands around her cup. When Carolyn was grown. That narrows it down to 40 years. Nora, Walt said quietly. She turned on him. Don't say my name like I'm the one making this uncomfortable. I was going to say your pump is leaking. Oh, slow leak, not an emergency. That's becoming the house motto. He rose. I'll write down what it needs. Another invoice? No charge for bad news. He escaped too. Nora waited until his truck had pulled away before facing Alma again. If Mom met Miriam before I was born, why did she bring us here and pretend she didn't know her? I can't answer for Carolyn. Can you answer for Miriam? Miriam didn't pretend not to know any of you. She respected what your mother asked. Which was what? That she stay in her place. Nora glanced around the cottage. This place? Alma's expression shifted. Something like that? What was she to my mother? A horn sounded outside. Alma stood. That's my patient's neighbor, she said. Of course it is. I'm working. Everyone is always working the minute I ask the right question. Alma took her thermos from the counter. Make the stew, she said. That's your answer? No, it's Thursday. Then she left. Nora watched the sedan pull onto the road, angrier at the neatness of its turn than she had any right to be. The pump dripped in the cellar. The toilet flushed properly. The jelly jar held $19 and 7 paper cups were gone. On the counter, Walt had left a note that said, tank, valve, fittings, $6.50, maybe $6 if pipe cooperates. She had promised food without owning enough carrots. Nora called Daryl. I need tonight off. You have 2 shifts. I know. Which means if I give this one to Levon, you'll have one. I understand how numbers work. Do you? Currently, no. She explained the cottage coffee window, leaving out the dead woman, the secret visits, and the inherited stew. Daryl listened while tapping something against his desk. How much did you make? He asked. $19. In how long? An hour? Before expenses? Yes. Did you steal the coffee? I inherited it. Depreciation on an urn? Daryl, just helping. Can you give Levon my shift? She's already here. Nora closed her eyes. Why? Adult twins. You call her before I call out? She can sense weakness. Levon shouted something in the background about not being psychic, just available. Nora thanked them both and hung up. The grocery store charged her $46.18 for chicken, carrots, potatoes, celery, onions, cream, and 2 bunches of parsley because Carolyn's recipe said a good handful, and Nora did not know whose hand it meant. In the cottage pantry, she found 3 stock pots. One was too small, one had a warped bottom. The third was heavy aluminum, with black handles worn pale at the edges. She lifted it onto the stove and froze. A shallow dent marked one side near the base. Carolyn's stock pot had the same dent. Nora remembered making it. At 16, she had dropped the empty pot while putting it away, and Carolyn had rushed into the kitchen convinced Nora had broken a bone. After seeing the pot, she had said, "Good, it needed character." Nora turned the dent toward the window. Tessa had worn Carolyn's apron and inherited the business equipment, yet the pot sat here. Maybe it was only similar. Maybe every family owned a dented pot and assigned meaning to the damage. She texted Tessa a picture. Is this Mom's? Tessa replied 2 minutes later. Yes. I looked everywhere for that. Then, don't use steel wool. Nora set the phone face down. Janelle came downstairs after noon, dressed for work and carrying a banana. Is something burning? Nora turned. An onion had blackened against the bottom of the pot. No. Janelle looked inside. Something is transitioning. Nora scraped the onion into the trash. You cook? She asked. I make excellent toast. Can you peel potatoes? I can injure a potato in several useful ways. They worked at the table, Janelle peeling while Nora chopped. The arrangement felt less intimate than eating together, but more intimate than strangers should have been. Janelle did not ask why Nora seemed furious with the carrots. You said you stayed here before, Nora said. Mm-hmm. What was Miriam like? Janelle rotated a potato in her hand. Direct. Everyone keeps using that word for women who made people nervous. She made people nervous. Why? She noticed things. If you said you weren't hungry while looking at the stove, she ignored you and made a plate. If you said you were fine and kept rubbing your wrist, she handed you an ice pack. That sounds intrusive. It was. People liked her? People relied on her. That's different. Nora cut a carrot too hard. It rolled off the board. Did she talk about family? Not with me. Carolyn Vale? Janelle shook her head. At least one person in the county had not been admitted to the conspiracy. Janelle picked up the fallen carrot and rinsed it. You could ask Alma. I did. Then you've learned how Alma answers questions. You know her too? Everyone who came through here more than twice knew Alma. She was either getting coffee, giving medical advice nobody requested, or telling Miriam not to give things away. What things? Food, rooms, gas money, her own coat once. Miriam sounds bad at business. She wasn't running a business, so I've heard. Janelle slid the peeled potatoes into a bowl. She was running a place. Nora looked toward the front room, at the empty tables and the window facing the road. At 3, a man stopped and asked when the stew would be ready. At 3:30, a woman in navy scrubs bought coffee and reserved 2 bowls. At 4, Walt arrived carrying a sack of rolls from the bread truck driver. I didn't order those, Nora said. He had day-olds. How much? Already paid. By who? Walt pointed to the jelly jar. You took money from my jar? I put in 5. How much were the rolls? 3. You made $2 on my confusion. Business. By 5, 11 people had come through. Some ate at the tables, others carried bowls to their cars. Nora charged $7 with a roll, 8 with coffee, then lowered it to 6 for a woman who counted quarters twice. She lost track of who had paid. Walt washed bowls without being asked. Janelle left for work carrying stew in a lidded motel ice bucket because they had run out of containers. The room filled with conversation that seemed to start in the middle. Road construction, hospital staffing, a tire that kept losing air, somebody's supervisor who used the word teamwork before assigning weekend shifts. No one asked who Nora was. They behaved as though the cottage had reopened and she was simply the person standing behind the counter. At 6:15, Melanie walked in. She wore a cream blouse and carried a cardboard box labeled Nora Bathroom. The room quieted around her. Melanie looked at the tables, the stock pot, the money jar. What is this? She asked. Thursday, Walt said. Nora gave him a look. He returned to washing bowls. Melanie set the box on a chair. I brought the things from under the upstairs sink. You could have called. I did. Nora checked her phone. 5 missed calls. I was busy. I see that. The words were neutral. Melanie's eyes were not. Alma entered behind her, bringing a stack of clean takeout containers. She saw Melanie and stopped. For a second, something almost recognizable passed between them. Melanie frowned. Do I know you? No, Alma said too quickly. Nora heard it. So did Melanie. Alma moved to the stove. Nora filled a bowl for her and waited while she tasted it. The older woman chewed, swallowed, then shook her head. What? Nora asked. Needs rosemary. Mom never used rosemary. Miriam did. Nora took the bowl back, irritated beyond reason. Then, maybe I made Carolyn's version. Alma watched her stir the pot. Melanie was still standing beside the box, looking between them. Who is Miriam? She asked. Nora set down the spoon. That, she said, is what everybody in this room keeps refusing to tell me. Alma looked at Melanie, then at Nora. The noise of the road pressed briefly against the windows. She was Carolyn's mother, Alma said. Melanie laughed once. It wasn't disbelief exactly. It was the sound of something breaking before the person holding it understood the weight. No, she said. Alma remained still. Our grandmother was Louise Vale. Louise raised Carolyn. Raised her because she was her mother. Raised her as her mother. The distinction settled over the room. Someone near the window set down a spoon. Nora noticed all the strangers then. The half-empty bowls. The man in a reflective work vest, pretending to study a postcard from Arizona. Walt, standing at the sink with water running over his hands. Everybody out, Nora said. Nobody moved. We're closed. A woman reached for her purse. I haven't paid. Then today is Miriam's treat. Walt shut off the water. You don't have to. Out, Walt. He dried his hands and began guiding people toward the door, with the weary efficiency of a man clearing customers before a storm. Alma stayed beside the stove. Melanie did not move at all. When the last car left, Nora turned the sign from coffee to closed. The front room looked abruptly smaller. Melanie pulled out a chair and sat. Explain what you just said. Alma lowered herself across from her. Miriam gave birth to Carolyn. No. Yes. When? Carolyn was born in 1965. I know when Mom was born. Nora sat beside the box of bathroom things. Her knees felt unreliable. Louise and Robert Vale were her parents, Melanie insisted. She lived in their house. We have pictures. I'm not saying she didn't. You're saying Nana wasn't her mother. I'm saying she wasn't the woman who gave birth to her. Then what was she? Alma glanced at Nora. Louise was Miriam's aunt. Melanie stared. Nora pictured Nana Louise as she remembered her. Short, hard-backed, fond of pink lipstick and unsweetened iced tea. She had died when Nora was 12. Robert had been gone longer. In every family photograph, Louise stood with one hand on Carolyn's shoulder, as if holding her in place. Miriam was 17, Alma said. Her family decided Louise and Robert could give Carolyn a stable life. They were married. They owned a house. They wanted a daughter. Decided, Nora repeated. That's the word Miriam used? Did she agree? She signed what they put in front of her. That isn't what I asked. No, Alma said. I don't think she freely agreed. Melanie shook her head hard enough to move her hair. Mom would have told us. Your mother did not speak about Miriam. Thank you. We noticed. Alma absorbed the sharpness without reacting. Did Mom know? Nora asked. Yes. How long? Louise told her when she was 19. And Miriam? She found Carolyn years later. Carolyn was 32. Nora looked toward the kitchen. At 32, Carolyn had been married, raising Melanie and Tessa, working weekends from a rented church kitchen. Nora had seen pictures from those years. Carolyn, with darker hair and quicker laughter, wearing flour on her cheek. She had never pictured a locked room inside that woman. What does found mean? Melanie asked. She showed up. She wrote first. And Mom answered, eventually. Then what? They met. Here? No. The cottage belonged to somebody else then. Miriam rented a room in town. She moved here later. Why? Nora asked. I think she wanted to be close enough for Carolyn to choose her, and far enough away that she didn't feel chased. Melanie pushed away from the table. That's very considerate, Mel, Nora said. No, don't. Melanie paced to the postcard wall and back. You're all making her sound like some sad, patient saint. She gave Mom away. Miriam never described herself as a saint, Alma said. She stayed gone. Yes. She knew where Mom was. After a while, yes. And she stayed gone. Alma's chin lowered. Yes. The answer took some air out of Melanie's anger. Not because it reassured her, but because Alma refused to defend what could not be defended neatly. Nora thought of the empty envelope. I came. You weren't here. Why did Mom bring us here? She asked. That was between them. Stop saying that. I don't know every reason. You know more than us. I knew Miriam. I knew pieces of Carolyn when she came through that door. That doesn't make me the keeper of their whole history. You knew enough to look at me and know I was the youngest. Alma folded her hands. Miriam had a photograph. The bent photograph from Carolyn's kitchen flashed through Nora's mind. Two women on the porch. Carolyn young, Miriam tall and red-haired. Of us? Of all three of you. Carolyn gave it to her. Melanie's face tightened. Mom gave pictures of us to a stranger. She wasn't a stranger to Carolyn. She was a stranger to us. Yes. The word struck harder than an argument. Melanie grabbed her phone. Who are you calling? Nora asked. Tessa. She just finished a catering job. She can answer. Tessa picked up on the fourth ring. If this is about the bathroom box, I told you I'd get the rest tomorrow. Did you know Miriam was Mom's mother? A pause followed, long enough that Nora heard a vehicle pass on Tessa's end. What? Miriam gave birth to Mom. Another pause. Then Tessa laughed, just as Melanie had. That's not funny, Melanie said. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because you said a sentence that doesn't belong in my day. Come to the cottage. I'm unloading chicken salad. Come here. I have mayonnaise in a van with a dying fan bearing. Tessa? Something in Melanie's voice finally reached her. I'll be there in 20, Tessa said. She arrived in 17, wearing Carolyn's apron and one disposable food service glove. She had apparently forgotten the other. Alma told it again. Tessa stood behind a chair rather than sitting, gripping its back with her gloved hand. When Alma finished, Tessa said, Nana Louise hated red hair. The remark was so specific and so unrelated that Nora wondered if she had misheard. What? Melanie asked. She always said redheads looked cheap in yellow, remember? Mom wore that yellow dress to church, and Nana told her she looked like a warning sign. Nana insulted everyone. She hated red hair, Tessa repeated. Alma looked at her carefully. Miriam's hair was red. I remember. Nora's attention sharpened. Remember what? The woman here. I remember her hair. Tessa tugged off the plastic glove one finger at a time, and Mom wouldn't let her braid mine. Melanie sat again. She asked once, Tessa continued. I was sweating, and my hair was sticking to my neck. She said she could braid it. Mom came across the room and said no. So fast I thought the woman had done something bad. What did Miriam do? Nora asked. Got me a rubber band. The memory seemed to trouble Tessa more than the revelation. She rubbed her bare fingers together as if removing powder. Why didn't Mom tell us? She asked. Alma looked exhausted now. Carolyn believed Miriam had abandoned her. Learning that the adults around them pressured Miriam did not erase the years Miriam stayed silent afterward. She was angry. She was ashamed that she wanted to know her. She didn't want you girls confused about Louise. Louise was dead by the time I was 20, Melanie said. Anger doesn't always expire when it becomes convenient. Melanie looked at Nora. And Mom left you this place. Nora heard the accusation before she understood it. She left you the house. That isn't what I mean. Tessa got the business. I know what we got. Then what do you mean? Melanie stood. You got this. Her secret family? Her real mother's place? Real mother? Tessa said. You were just defending Nana. I'm not choosing words for court. There is no court, Nora said. There is a leaking pump and a roof that Walt keeps looking at like it insulted him. You still got the answer, Melanie said. I got it 10 minutes before you did, because you came here, because you left it to me. Mom left it to you. And both of you thought that was fine until the cottage had a story attached. Melanie's cheeks colored. I never said it wasn't worth anything. You called it haunted. That was me, Tessa said. No one wanted it, Nora continued. You wanted the house. Tessa wanted the business. I got the thing from the woman Mom wouldn't name. Now suddenly I got too much? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Alma rose. I should go. Melanie turned on her. You should have told us before. I made a promise. To Miriam, to Carolyn. That stopped all three sisters. When? Nora asked. Last fall. Carolyn had still been walking without the cane then. Still telling Nora the doctor expected improvement. Still burning envelopes in the kitchen sink. What exactly did she make you promise? Tessa asked. Not to bring Miriam into her house? She's dead, Melanie said. Carolyn knew that would happen. Then why leave Nora the cottage? Melanie demanded. Why send one of us directly into the thing she made everyone hide? Alma looked at Nora. I don't know, she said. But Carolyn rarely did anything without wanting someone to notice. After Alma left, the sisters stood around the table without looking at one another. The stock pot had gone cold. A skin of cream clung to the surface. Tessa removed Carolyn's apron and folded it over the back of a chair. My chicken is still in the van. Melanie picked up the bathroom box. I have to go. Neither said goodbye. Nora locked the door behind them, though the sun was still up. She counted the money in the jelly jar. $116. After groceries, paper cups, coffee, and the rolls Walt had partly purchased with her own money, she had made less than $60. The cottage needed $600 for water, and possibly $20,000 for a roof. The arithmetic remained insulting. On the counter sat one untouched bowl of stew. Nora found rosemary in the pantry, dried and gray-green in a small jar. She pinched some between her fingers and crushed it into the bowl. The scent rose immediately. Not Carolyn's kitchen, a porch in summer, a damp washcloth against her neck, red hair bending into sunlight. A woman's hands tucking blankets around a laundry basket while Carolyn watched from the doorway. The memory vanished before Nora could hold it. She tasted the stew. For one impossible second, it felt less like learning something new than remembering what everyone had taught her to forget. Janelle came in after midnight and found Nora asleep at one of the tables with her cheek pressed against the bathroom box. She touched Nora's shoulder carefully. Nora jerked awake, knocking a bottle of shampoo onto the floor. Sorry, Janelle said. The door was unlocked. I locked it. It was unlocked when I came in. Nora looked toward the front door. She remembered turning the deadbolt after her sisters left. She did not remember opening it again, though she must have when she carried the trash outside. "Good," she said. "I'm running an inn with unreliable water and recreational access. I can go back out and break in properly." "No, you're fine." Janelle set a covered bowl on the table. "Is this available?" Nora lifted her head. "You found the stew. It found me. The refrigerator smells like it. $7. Janelle took out her wallet. "I was joking. I'm hungry." "5, then. The roll is gone." Janelle put $5 on the table and carried the bowl to the microwave. Nora watched it turn behind the cloudy glass. "You use rosemary?" Janelle asked after her first bite. "I added it at the end. That's how Miriam made it." Nora rubbed the mark the box had left on her cheek. "Apparently, I'm the last person to learn that." Janelle sat across from her. "My mother learned the recipe here," Nora said. "She also learned how to lie here. Or maybe she brought that skill with her. Most people bring something." Nora almost laughed. "Did you ever remember a place you didn't know you remembered?" she asked. Janelle tore the soft center from the roll Alma had saved under a napkin. "I travel for work. Half my life is opening a motel door and thinking I've been in that room before. No, I mean, actually remember it. I know." Nora waited. Janelle dipped the bread into the stew. "My grandmother's house had a green hallway. For years I thought I invented it because everyone said the hallway was blue. Then my aunt found an old picture. It had been green before they painted it. What did that feel like? Mostly annoying? I wanted a spiritual experience. Instead, I got proof my family had poor taste in paint." Nora smiled despite herself. Janelle pointed her spoon at her. "A memory can be true without telling you what it means. That sounds like something Alma would say. Then forget I said it." In the morning, Nora wrote "closed" on a sheet of cardboard and propped it inside the window beneath the wooden sign. At 6:10, Alma knocked. "We're closed," Nora called. "I can read. Then this is a test." Alma held up a paper bag. "I brought biscuits." Nora opened the door. "That's how Miriam used to get around the sign," Alma said as she entered. "I'm beginning to understand why Mom had boundaries." Alma paused. Nora took the bag from her. "That was unfair. It was accurate. That doesn't make it fair." "No." They ate biscuits without coffee because Nora refused to turn on the urn. It was a small and largely symbolic victory. "I remembered something," Nora said. Alma waited. Rosemary, a washcloth, Miriam leaning over a laundry basket. A softness appeared around Alma's mouth. She talked about that basket. Why? "You screamed whenever anyone put you down." Miriam lined the laundry basket with blankets so she could keep you beside the stove. "Did Mom let her hold me?" "Sometimes." "Did she know Miriam was her mother then?" "Yes." Nora pulled apart a biscuit she no longer wanted. "So, I was here before. All of you were. For years, off and on. And she never told us who Miriam was?" "No." "Did Miriam want us to know?" Alma wiped butter from her thumb. "She wanted many things she did not believe she had the right to ask for. That makes her sound noble again. She could also be cowardly." Nora looked up. "People tell the story as though Miriam was forced into silence once and remained helpless forever," Alma said. "She wasn't helpless forever. She had chances to contact Carolyn earlier. She was afraid Carolyn would reject her, so she waited until fear became habit. Did Carolyn reject her? Repeatedly. But she kept coming here. Repeatedly. That's exhausting. It was. Why did you help them hide it?" Alma took her time answering. "My husband left when I was 48. Everybody in town knew before I did. For months, I couldn't buy toothpaste without someone lowering their voice and asking how I was holding up. Miriam never asked. She poured coffee, gave me a room upstairs, and let me be someone whose marriage had not just ended. That's why you protected her. That's why I understood the value of a place where a person could choose what was said about them." Nora looked around the front room. "But this isn't only their place now," she said. "No. If you know something that affects me, you don't get to decide I'm safer without it." Alma nodded. "I mean it. I heard you. Are there more grandmothers?" "No. Secret husbands?" "Not that I know. Other recipes?" "Plenty." Nora reached for the biscuit bag. "That one I can survive." After Alma left, Nora made a sign on the back of a flattened cereal box. "Coffee 6, 9, a.m., rooms by the night or week. Thursday, stew, 5, 7. Prices on the wall, pay before you leave. Under that she added, the bell is not a toy. She taped the sign beside the serving window and drove to the motel for her evening shift. Daryl read a mystery novel behind the desk, while Nora checked in 3 roofers and a woman attending a regional quilting conference. At 8, Levon appeared with fried chicken and a calculator. I heard you started a roadside inn, she said. I rented 1 room. That's how roadside inns begin. How do they end? Fire, divorce, or decorative signs? Levon placed the calculator beside Nora. You need to know your nightly cost. I need to know whether the pressure tank will explode. That's part of your nightly cost. Between check-ins, Levon helped Nora list electricity, cleaning supplies, coffee, sheets, water, and repairs. She refused to count Nora's labor as free. If you pay yourself nothing, she said, you'll eventually hate every person who walks through the door. I already have a head start. Then pay yourself double. The numbers were worse than Nora wanted and better than she feared. At $45, 1 occupied room barely covered itself, if she included repairs. At 60, it began to matter. Miriam charged the 32, Nora said. When? Years ago. Years ago, gasoline was $2 and people wore low-rise jeans on purpose. Nora changed the room price on her sign before driving home. Janelle stood beneath it with her arms folded. 60? I learned math. I liked you better before. You already paid 45 through Sunday. Good. I'll preserve your innocence. The pressure tank failed the next morning. It did not explode. It simply stopped sending water upstairs, while Janelle had conditioner in her hair, which resulted in an unmistakable cry from the bathroom. I know, Nora shouted from below. I look like a glazed pastry. Nora carried up 2 pitchers of warmed bottled water. Janelle rinsed her hair kneeling over the tub and left for work wearing a scarf. Walt arrived at 7 with a new tank in the truck bed. You said 600, Nora told him. 6 if the pipe cooperated. Pipe declined. How much? 680. I don't have 680. You have 300 for parts? Nora had 300 if she counted the room, money, coffee money, Thursday earnings, and what remained from her motel check. I have 250. I can start with that. What about labor? Pay it later. I don't want a favor. Then don't call it one. What do I call it? An invoice. He handed her one. The bottom showed 250 due now, and the balance split over 4 months. Nora read it twice. Interest? I'm a tire man, not a credit card. Why are you doing this? Walt leaned against the porch post. Miriam fed my wife every Tuesday for 11 months when cancer made everything taste like metal. Chicken, rice, canned peaches, nothing fancy. I'm not Miriam, I noticed. So I don't inherit her debts. No. Then why? Because I have a pressure tank. You need one, and I don't need all the money today. That is a favor. That is how roads worked before everybody decided inconvenience was a personal failure. Nora looked toward his truck. I'll pay every month, I assumed. And coffee isn't payment. Agreed. Neither is stew. Let's not be unreasonable. By afternoon, water ran upstairs without coughing. Nora handed Walt $250 and felt physically ill watching him fold it into his wallet. Janelle extended her stay another week. Tessa rented the cottage refrigerator again on Friday, paid without bargaining, and brought Nora a proper cash box from the catering supplies. It has a key, she said. The jelly jar made me nervous. The jelly jar is transparent. That is the problem with you and the jelly jar. They drank coffee at the counter while the refrigeration unit in Tessa's van sat silent outside, awaiting its replacement part. Did Melanie call you? Nora asked. Twice. What did she say? That the foundation crack is bigger than Craig thought. That's bad, and that this place may be worth more than we assumed. Nora lowered her cup. Because Miriam was Mom's mother? Because it has land. It has a ditch. It has nearly 2 acres behind the pines. How do you know? Melanie looked at the property description. Nora stared through the back window. Beyond the cottage, weeds gave way to pines and a narrow strip of open ground she had not explored. It's still mine, she said. I know. Does Melanie? Tessa traced a coffee ring with one finger. She knows what the index card says. That isn't what I asked. No. Nora waited. Tessa looked uncomfortable. She thinks we should consider selling both properties. Both? The house and the cottage. Pay off the house mortgage, fix the van, divide whatever remains more evenly. More evenly, her phrase. After she moved into the house and put my bathroom things in a box. I'm not saying I agree. You're also not saying you don't. My business is running out of money. You inherited active accounts. I also inherited unpaid invoices, deposits Mom already spent on ingredients, and a walk-in cooler at the rented kitchen that makes a burning smell. Nora stood. So the cottage is garbage until your cooler breaks. That isn't fair. No, it's arithmetic. Tessa flinched, perhaps because it sounded like Carolyn. The porch bell rang. Melanie stood outside holding a folder beneath one arm. Craig waited in their car with the engine running. Nora opened the door but did not invite her in. Melanie looked past her at the new price sign, the cash box, and Tessa's tubs stacked inside the refrigerator. You really opened? She said. I'm trying. We need to talk. If the folder contains a picture of my ditch, I've seen it. Melanie held it tighter. The foundation repair on the house is going to cost $18,000. I'm sorry. Craig and I can't cover that and the mortgage. Nora glanced toward the car. Craig stared straight ahead. Melanie's composure wavered. Mom didn't leave us enough cash to maintain 2 failing properties, she said. Whatever she intended, this arrangement doesn't work. It works for you if I sell mine. It works for all of us. Tessa came to the doorway but stayed behind Nora. Melanie saw her and straightened. I want us to sit down, she said, all 3 of us, and discuss selling the cottage before Nora pours every dollar she has into it. Nora thought of Walt's invoice on the counter, of Janelle's wet hair, of the $60 already tucked into the cash box for another night. You're too late, she said. I already started. Melanie's eyes dropped to the floorboards as if she might see Nora's money draining through them. How much? She asked. How much what? How much have you spent? That's not your business. It becomes my business if you expect us to help when the roof caves in. I haven't asked you for help. You will. The certainty of it hurt more than the prediction. Tessa stepped around Nora. Can we not do this in the doorway? Craig's waiting, Melanie said. Craig has air conditioning. Nora opened the door wider. Come in or don't. Melanie came in. She set the folder on a table but kept one hand on it. Tessa took the chair nearest the refrigerator. Nora remained standing behind the counter, aware that the position made her look territorial and unwilling to surrender it. Melanie opened the folder. There were photographs of the crack along Carolyn's foundation, close enough to make it resemble a canyon. Repair estimates were clipped behind them. $18,300 for excavation, drainage, and reinforcement. The language seemed excessive for a house that had held still through every storm Nora remembered. Craig found water damage behind the dining room wall too, Melanie said. The insurance won't cover it because it's long-term seepage. Nora studied the photograph. I'm sorry. You keep saying that like I'm telling you about a stranger's illness. What do you want me to say? I want you to understand that Mom didn't leave me a perfect house. She left me a mortgage and a hole in the ground. And she left me a broken pump, a leaking tank, questionable drinking water, and a chimney that's trying to leave. I know. No, you drove by once. That was Tessa. Tessa raised a hand. I regret participating. Melanie closed her eyes. This is exactly why I wanted us to sit down. We are sitting, Tessa said. You are. Nora is guarding the coffee. Nora looked at the pot behind her. Nobody is guarding the coffee. Then sit. The instruction sounded so much like Carolyn that Nora nearly obeyed. Instead, she folded her arms. Melanie pushed one estimate toward her. If we sell the house as it is, the mortgage and repairs eat most of what we'd get. If we fix it first, we need money we don't have, so sell it as it is. And go where? Nora stared at her. Melanie caught the answer in Nora's face. That's different. Why? Craig and I built a life, then live in your condo. The condo was already listed. You listed it before you knew the foundation was bad? We thought we were moving into Mom's house. You were. Mom's house is damaged. So is mine. That cottage was never your home. It is now. The words surprised Nora with how true they sounded. Melanie sat back. Tessa looked between them. Selling both places doesn't solve everything. It just creates 2 sales. If we pool the proceeds... No, Nora said. Melanie's mouth tightened. You haven't even heard the numbers. I heard pool. The cottage may be worth enough to give all 3 of us room to breathe. It's not a jar of emergency money. It is property. It is my property. You sound like a person I don't recognize. Nora almost said, You sound exactly like yourself. The cruelty arrived ready-made, efficient, and tempting. She swallowed it. Melanie looked toward the stairs. You've been here a week. And in that week, I got the water working, rented a room, served food, and made a payment plan for the pressure tank. Tessa's head turned. You replaced it? Walt did. How much? $680. Melanie made a helpless gesture. That's what I mean. You're putting money into this without knowing what else is wrong. I know what's wrong. Everything. That isn't funny. It keeps being a little funny. No, Nora. It keeps being a way for you to turn panic into a personality. The room went quiet. Tessa touched the edge of the table. Mel. What? She thinks because she can joke while something collapses, she's handling it. Nora felt the sentence go in deep because Carolyn had said a gentler version of it more than once. Melanie's anger broke around the edges. I'm living in the room where Mom died, she said. Craig wants to make it an office, and I can't let him move the bed. I can't sleep upstairs because I hear her calling from the bathroom. Every cabinet I open smells like her lotion. And now I find out there was an entire house where she went to be someone we didn't know. Nora's arms lowered. Melanie looked at the postcard wall. You get to stand here and discover her. I get to peel medical tape off the bedroom wall. I was there too, Nora said. You went home at night. I lived there. You know what I mean? No, I don't think you know what you mean. Melanie's eyes filled, which made her furious. Tessa stared down at her hands. Nora came around the counter and sat, though the gesture arrived too late to soften anything. I don't want the house, she said. I don't want your mortgage. I don't think Mom divided things fairly, but I'm not asking you to fix that. I'm asking you to let what she gave me be mine. And if it fails, then I fail. We're your sisters. You remember that whenever you predict I'll need rescuing. Melanie pushed back her chair. Take the rest of your things by Sunday, she said. Tessa looked up. That's unnecessary. Craig needs the spare room for storage. There are 4 bedrooms. He needs the room. Nora held Melanie's gaze. Fine. Melanie gathered the photographs, but one slid to the floor. Nora picked it up and returned it without looking at the crack again. At the door, Melanie turned. I'm not trying to take something from you. That's exactly what you came to discuss. I'm trying to keep all of us from drowning. You started by assigning who gets the boat. Melanie went outside. Craig backed the car out before she had fully fastened her seatbelt. Tessa stayed at the table. You were quiet, Nora said. I was thinking. You usually manage both. I don't want you to sell. Nora's anger lost its footing. Tessa continued. I also need money, and when Melanie said, pool the proceeds, part of me calculated how many catering invoices I could pay. Thank you for your honesty. I'm not proud of it. Honesty isn't a pageant. Tessa glanced toward the refrigerator. I need a kitchen. You have one. I rent one by the hour. The walk-in cooler is dying. The landlord says replacing it will increase my rent. Nora waited. I could prep here 2 mornings a week, Tessa said. Temporarily. This isn't licensed as a commercial kitchen. I can do cold prep and storage here. Finish cooking at the rented kitchen. I checked. When? Before Melanie came. So, while she was planning to sell the cottage, you were planning to move in. I contain multitudes. You contain nerve. Tessa smiled faintly. That too. They agreed on 2 mornings, refrigerator space, 1 front table, and $80 a week. Tessa insisted on writing it down. Nora found the notebook Lavon had used for calculations. Electricity increase gets reviewed after a month, Nora said. You enjoy saying reviewed. It sounds expensive. You've changed. I own a ditch. Tessa wrote the first payment date and signed her name with a flourish. Then she tore out the page and made Nora rewrite it because Nora had forgotten to include cleanup. Janelle left Sunday morning carrying clean laundry and 2 containers of stew. She hugged Nora at the door without warning. I'm back on the eastern route next month, she said. Hold the brass room for me. The brass room? The bed. I was calling it front bedroom. No charm. $60 is too much for a room named by direction. Fine. Brass room. Janelle handed her an envelope containing the final payment and an extra $20. What's this? For the shampoo incident. The water failed. That's my fault. The scarf made me look mysterious. I got compliments. Nora tried to return the $20. Janelle refused. An hour later, a respiratory therapist named Denise rented the twin room for 4 nights. That evening, a traveling maintenance contractor took the brass room through Friday. Both paid the higher rate without arguing. Nora reduced her motel shifts to 2, then spent the next several days discovering that being at the cottage did not mean she worked less. Coffee began at 6. Tessa arrived at 8 with tubs, knives, and opinions. Rooms needed stripping at 10. Grocery shopping consumed the afternoon. Someone always wanted to know whether stew could be made without dairy, salt, onions, or anything that caused inflammation. Alma volunteered answers until Nora started charging her for biscuits. Walt installed hooks beside the serving window and refused to explain where he found them. The bread driver, whose name was Curtis, began leaving day-old rolls in exchange for coffee and a bowl on Thursdays. Nora wrote each exchange in the notebook. Rolls, Curtis, $8 credit, hooks, Walt, ask value. Walt crossed that out and wrote nosy. Tessa crossed out nosy and wrote poor accounting. By the second Thursday, Nora sold 27 bowls of stew. She made one pot Carolyn's way and one with rosemary. The rosemary pot emptied first. Melanie did not come. She did not call when Nora collected the rest of her clothes from Carolyn's house Sunday afternoon. Craig had stacked the boxes in the garage. Nora could hear Melanie moving inside, but the door between the kitchen and garage remained closed. Nora waited beside the car longer than necessary. Then she loaded the boxes herself. That night, the weather report promised thunderstorms. The sky above the pines had turned the color of bruised fruit by the time the last coffee customer left. Rain struck after midnight. It came hard and sideways, hammering the roof, throwing handfuls against the windows. Nora woke to someone pounding on her bedroom door. "The ceiling's leaking," Denise called. Nora ran across the hall. Water dripped through the plaster above the twin beds. Denise stood in the doorway holding her suitcase and a trash can. The maintenance contractor was already in the hall, wearing plaid pajama pants and carrying another bucket. "I can patch it from the attic," he said. "Not during lightning," Nora said. A crack of thunder shook the blue mugs downstairs. They moved Denise into Nora's room and Nora's bedding into the front room. Then the contractor shouted from the brass room. Water had begun running down that wall too. Nora climbed onto the bed with a towel and pressed it beneath the window frame. The plaster above her gave a soft, wet sigh. A piece the size of a dinner plate dropped onto the quilt. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then water poured through the opening. Nora stood barefoot in the ruined bed, rain blowing through the window, and understood why Melanie had looked at a foundation crack as though it were a verdict. The maintenance contractor moved first. He pulled the ruined quilt off the bed and shoved a plastic storage bin beneath the stream. Denise brought every towel she could find. Nora stood on the mattress, pressing both hands against the wet wall, as though she might keep the cottage together by refusing to let go. "Nora," the contractor said. She looked down. "My name's Martin. I told you yesterday. I know. You're standing under damaged plaster. I'm holding the towel. The towel has finished its career." Another section of ceiling sagged. Martin took Nora by the waist and lifted her off the bed just before the plaster split. Wet insulation and gray water collapsed onto the mattress. The sound was soft. That made it worse. Nora stared at the wreckage. "We need to shut off power to this side," Martin said. "The breaker's in the pantry. I'll get it." Denise touched Nora's arm. "Do you have tarps?" "No." "Plastic shower curtains?" "2." They pulled the curtains down, stretched them over the bed, and weighted the corners with washstand drawers. It was useless against the water coming through the ceiling, but doing nothing felt impossible. Downstairs, Martin moved the coffee urn and cash box away from a leak spreading near the serving window. Denise lined pots along the floor, each filled at a different rhythm, giving the room the sound of several clocks disagreeing. Nora called Tessa. Her sister answered in a thick, half-asleep voice. "Who died?" "The roof." "What?" "The roof is leaking in both guest rooms." "Are you safe?" "I'm wet." "That's not what I asked. There's no fire." Martin shut off the upstairs power. "Who's Martin?" "Plaid pants." "Nora." "He's the guest in the brass room. He does maintenance. I'm coming." "No, there's lightning." "I'll wait until it passes. Bring tarps. I have catering tablecloths. Those are fabric. They're stain-resistant." "Tarps, Tessa, right." Nora ended the call and opened the cash box. She had enough to return Denise's 4 nights and Martin's remaining 2. The refunds would erase nearly everything the rooms had earned after the pressure tank payment. Denise saw the money in her hand. "No," she said. "The room isn't usable. I stayed 2 nights. You're not paying for tonight. I'm sleeping in your room. You're sleeping in my room because yours fell apart. I've paid more for less. That doesn't make it acceptable. Denise accepted 1 night's refund after an argument. Martin refused any. I helped make the mess worse by touching the window, he said. The roof was already leaking, but I was technically near it. That isn't how responsibility works. It is when I want to sleep on the couch and not drive through a storm. Nora put his money on top of his duffel. He put it back in the cash box. She took it out again. Denise finally removed the bills from both of them and hid them somewhere in the kitchen. Find them in the morning, she said. We're tired. Nobody slept much. At dawn, the storm passed east, leaving the road shining and the pines dripping. The cottage smelled of wet wood, coffee grounds, and the mineral odor of broken plaster. Nora stepped outside barefoot. Shingles lay across the yard like dark playing cards. One section of flashing had peeled away near the chimney. The roofline had not collapsed, but parts of it looked lifted, loosened from the rest. Tessa arrived with 3 blue tarps, 2 buckets, a shop vacuum, and the cheesecake knife. What is that for? Nora asked. I panicked. Behind her, Walt pulled in with a ladder tied to his truck. You called him? I called Alma. Alma called everyone. I don't need everyone. Tessa looked past her into the cottage. You need a roof. Walt and Martin climbed up after the shingles dried enough to hold them. Nora stayed below, because all 3 threatened to come down if she tried to follow. She and Tessa stripped the brass bed. The mattress made a wet sucking noise when they lifted it. Maybe it can dry, Tessa said. It has ceiling in it. Vacuum first? It has part of the house in it, Tess. Fine, new mattress. With what money? Tessa did not answer. They carried it to the porch and leaned it against the railing. Water ran from one corner. In the twin room, Denise's quick work had saved both mattresses. The plaster damage was smaller, but a dark stain spread across half the ceiling. Walt came down near noon. Flashing pulled loose, he said. Shingles on the roadside are worn through. Storm found every weak spot. How much? Emergency patch? About $2,400 if you hire it out. Nora laughed. Nobody else did. A real roof? She asked. 15 to 18, depending on what's underneath. Then we don't look underneath? Nora, Tessa said. We put the tarp on. Tarp gets you weeks, maybe a couple months if weather behaves. Weather has demonstrated character. Walt leaned the ladder against the porch. Martin and I can patch the flashing today. That'll stop the worst. You pay for materials. How much? $300 give or take. Nora went inside and retrieved the cash box. Denise's hidden refunds were inside the stock pot. The sight of the bills made her eyes sting. She counted out $212, then checked her wallet. 34. I have $246. I can cover the rest, Tessa said. No, it's $80. No. Nora, you let Walt finance a pressure tank. That was an invoice. Then I'll write an invoice. You need a cooler. I need my sister's roof not to leak onto paying guests. I'm not taking business money. Tessa's jaw moved. Walt looked between them. I'll buy the materials. Nora can add it to the balance. No, Nora and Tessa said together. He shrugged. Good family meeting. In the end, Nora paid $200. Tessa paid the rest and wrote loan, roof materials, $112 in the notebook, including tax and the gasoline she had used to buy tarps. Nora signed beneath it. Tessa looked offended. You didn't need to include gas. You wrote it. I was proving a point. Your point had mileage. While Walt and Martin worked overhead, Nora called Daryl. I need more shifts. How many? All the ones you can give me. What happened to the Empire? It got rained on. Daryl was quiet. You still have Levon? Nora asked. Yes. Adult twins? One has a meal plan now. Financial pressure is easing. Can I have 4 shifts? 3. If you want 4, you're covering Saturday overnight. I'll take it. That puts you here until 7 Sunday morning. I understand nights. I'm not sure you understand sleeping. I'll learn later. Rooms closed. Coffee stayed open because the front room remained mostly dry. Tessa used her 2 mornings and paid on time. Thursday stew became 20 bowls instead of 30 because Nora did not have the money to risk leftovers. For 6 days, Nora moved between the cottage and motel in a haze of wet towels and key cards. At the motel, she apologized for air conditioners she did not own and found extra pillows for people who complained as if the pillows had personally hidden. At the cottage, she pulled damaged plaster into contractor bags, scrubbed water stains, washed coffee cups, and climbed upstairs every time the wind changed to inspect the tarps. She slept on the front room couch because her bed belonged to Denise until the reservation ended. Denise left Nora a hairdryer and a note that said, "For walls, hair, and emotional emergencies." Martin spent his final evening replacing cracked caulk around the brass room window. He refused money, but accepted 2 future nights because Nora wrote them into the notebook at $60 each. "That's too much for caulk," he said. "You lifted me out of falling plaster. That was free. It embarrassed me, then charged me. I'm considering it." Alma came each morning and did not comment on Nora's exhaustion until Nora poured coffee into the sugar jar. "You need sleep," she said. "I need 8,000 shingles. You need both. I have one body and no shingles." Alma took the coffee pot from her. "Go lie down. The sign says coffee until 9. It's 8:30. Time continues. So will coffee." Nora sat at a table and put her head in her hands. Melanie was right. Alma did not offer the easy contradiction. She said, "I'd pour everything into this," Nora continued. 2 weeks, and I'm working overnights to keep rain out of a room I shouldn't have opened. You opened because you needed income. I opened because people walked in and acted like I knew what I was doing. That too. I should sell." Alma set the pot down. The words frightened Nora once they were in the room. She looked toward the postcard wall. Some cards had curled from damp air, but none had been ruined. "I don't want to," she said. "Then don't say should when you mean could." Nora lowered her hands. Did Miriam ever want to sell? Every winter. Why didn't she? Every spring. That isn't an answer. It was hers. The front door opened. Melanie entered carrying a dehumidifier. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot. She wore Carolyn's old raincoat, pale blue with one broken snap. Seeing it hurt Nora in a fresh, oddly domestic place. "Tessa said the upstairs got soaked," Melanie said. Nora stood. "She wasn't supposed to call you. She didn't." Walt told Alma. Alma told Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson called the church office, and someone at the church called me because my number is still listed for Mom. Alma poured herself coffee. Efficient. Melanie set down the dehumidifier. "Craig borrowed this from work. Thank him. He said you can keep it a week." Nora waited for the folder. There wasn't one. Melanie looked at the stained ceiling near the serving window. The house basement flooded too. Did it reach the furnace? No. Craig got the pump running. "I'm sorry." This time, Melanie nodded. She took something from the pocket of Carolyn's raincoat. A postcard, its edges softened by age. "I found this behind the picture of us at Tessa's 30th birthday," she said. It was tucked inside the frame. Nora accepted it. The front showed the cottage in winter. White siding bright beneath snow. A curl of smoke rising from the chimney. On the back, Miriam had written a few lines in blue ink. "Thursday is yours whether you come or not. You may be angry here. You may be silent. I won't call myself anything you don't offer." There was no signature. She knew Mom wouldn't need one, Melanie said. Nora read it again. "Why bring it to me? Because I almost threw it away." The honesty unsettled her. Melanie walked to the postcard wall and touched an empty patch near the center. "Then I thought maybe that was what Mom had been doing all these years. Not throwing things away, just putting them where nobody else could see them." Alma faced the window. "Did she stay here?" Melanie asked. "Near the end?" "Yes. Overnight?" "Sometimes." "In which room?" Alma looked upstairs. The brass room. Nora thought of the ruined mattress, the broken ceiling, the room she had rented without knowing. Melanie's fingers fell from the wall. "Mom died in my house," she said. Alma turned to her. "But she was sick here," Melanie continued. "She was scared here. She let this woman see it. Miriam washed her hair when she couldn't lift her arms," Alma said. "Carolyn complained about the water pressure the whole time." A sound escaped Nora, half laugh and half sob. Melanie covered her mouth. For the first time since Carolyn died, the sisters stood inside one of their mother's secrets and grieved the same woman. Melanie took the postcard from Nora and pinned it into the empty place on the wall. It did not match the cards around it. No bright beach, no hospital logo, no thank you written by someone passing through. Just the cottage under snow and a promise Carolyn had hidden behind another version of her life. "When did Miriam die?" Melanie asked. "January," Alma said. "Mom inherited this in February." "That sounds right. Was she here when Miriam died?" Melanie nodded. Alma looked down at the coffee she had stopped drinking. She came the night before. Did she stay? Yes. Was she with her? Not at the end. Miriam died early the next morning. Carolyn had gone home for medication and clean clothes. Nora thought of the empty envelope beneath the baseboard. I came. You weren't here. For years, Carolyn and Miriam had apparently built an entire relationship out of mistimed arrivals. Did Mom know it was that close? Nora asked. No one did. But she left. She had an oxygen machine at home, Alma said, and she was sick herself. It wasn't abandonment, Nora. I didn't say it was. No, but you thought it loudly. Melanie sat beneath the postcards. Did Miriam know Mom was sick? Yes. Did she leave the cottage to her because of that? She had always planned to leave it to Carolyn. Always, as long as I knew her. Melanie's face hardened again. So she could give Mom a house, but not a phone call when Mom was growing up. Alma did not defend Miriam. Nora appreciated that more each time. What happened after they met? She asked. When Mom was 32. They fought in a diner for 2 hours, Alma said. Miriam told me Carolyn didn't touch her coffee because she thought accepting anything would count as forgiveness. That sounds like Mom, Melanie murmured. Miriam tried to explain. Carolyn told her explanations were what people gave when apologies weren't enough. That also sounds like Mom, Nora said. She left. Then she came back the following week with a list of questions. Of course she had a list, Melanie said. Alma smiled faintly. Miriam answered what she could. Carolyn didn't believe all of it. They went months without speaking. Then Carolyn called. Then Miriam said the wrong thing. Then they stopped again. For 27 years? Nora asked. Not continuously. The shape of it became clearer. Not reconciliation, not estrangement, but a door that opened and closed depending on which woman was strong enough to approach it and which was frightened enough to retreat. Why bring us here? Melanie asked. I think Carolyn wanted Miriam to see you. I think she wanted to see Miriam with you. She just couldn't bear the name that came with it. Grandmother, Nora said. Alma's eyes met hers. Yes. Melanie wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand. She could have been our grandmother without replacing Nana. Carolyn may not have believed that. She decided for us. Yes. The simple agreement left room for Melanie's anger instead of trying to correct it. Tessa arrived while they were carrying the dehumidifier upstairs. She entered with 2 trays of sandwiches and stopped when she saw Melanie at one end of the machine and Nora at the other. Did I miss another secret relative? No, Nora said. Good. I brought turkey. They set the dehumidifier in the twin room. Craig had included an extension cord and written, "Do not plug into power" strip on a piece of masking tape wrapped around it. Tell him thank you, Nora said. Melanie examined the damaged ceiling. He can patch this. I can't pay him. I didn't say he'd charge. Then I can't accept. Melanie gave her a tired look. You accepted the dehumidifier. It has a return date. For heaven's sake, Nora, letting someone help you isn't losing a lawsuit. Tessa leaned against the doorframe. She made me invoice roof gas. You charged me. To prove a point. Your point consumed petroleum. Melanie looked from one to the other. What happened to you two? We have a commercial agreement, Tessa said. We do not call it commercial until you pay for half the paper towels. Tessa held out a sandwich. Turkey? They ate upstairs, sitting on the floor between the twin beds while the dehumidifier rattled. Melanie described the water in the basement. Tessa described the cooler's latest smell as electrical cinnamon. Nora told them about pouring coffee into the sugar jar. Nobody mentioned selling. For one afternoon, the cottage became work instead of evidence. Melanie pulled loose plaster into bags. Tessa scrubbed the wall. Nora spread Denise's hairdryer on a towel and aimed it at damp trim. At 4, Melanie left to meet a foundation contractor. Tessa returned to the rented kitchen. Nora drove to the motel. By Saturday night, she had worked 31 hours at the motel, served 3 coffee mornings, prepped Thursday stew, cleaned after 2 of Tessa's catering sessions, and slept in pieces too short to count. At 3:17 Sunday morning, Daryl found her sitting on the floor behind the front desk. She was awake, technically. Her eyes were open. She was holding a roll of receipt paper and could not remember why. What are you doing? He asked, checking inventory. Under the desk? It's a low shelf. There is no shelf. Nora looked beside her. There was no shelf. Daryl crouched. When did you sleep? Friday. What part? The dark part. That answer has no nutritional value. I'm fine. You checked room 218 into 128. I fixed it. After Mr. Fuller tried his key in a room occupied by a very surprised insurance salesman, everyone stayed dressed. That is not our hospitality standard. Nora put the receipt paper on the desk. Daryl sat in the lobby chair facing her. Without the paper cup of sunflower seeds, he looked more serious than she liked. I can't put you on overnight if you're running that place all day. I need the hours. You need not to send guests into each other's rooms. It happened once, and therefore it can happen. She hated the calmness of his voice. The roof broke, she said. I heard. How? Lavon. Why does Lavon know? She has adult twins and a phone. I need money for repairs. You also need your job. The sentence cooled her anger. Daryl leaned forward. Pick 3 shifts you can actually work, not the 3 that pay the most. The 3 where your brain arrives with you. I can work 4. No. You gave Lavon overtime. Lavon sleeps. Show off. He slid the schedule across the desk. Nora chose Tuesday and Friday evenings and Sunday afternoon. 24 hours. Enough to keep steady income, not enough to repair a roof quickly. When she returned to the cottage, 3 cars were waiting for coffee. The sign said, closed. Walt stood on the porch holding his empty cup. No, Nora said through the car window. It's 7. It's Sunday. Sunday used to be coffee. The sign says Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You changed it. Yes. When? While you were apparently not reading. Alma stepped out of one of the cars. She looks terrible. Thank you, Nora said. You should open long enough to tell everyone. I am telling everyone. Close means the coffee is not available. Walt examined his empty cup, as if Nora had personally altered its nature. What are we supposed to do? He asked. There is a gas station 6 miles east. Their coffee tastes like tire water. You work at a tire shop. You'll feel at home. Nora walked past him and locked the door from inside. Someone knocked. She ignored it. The knocking stopped after a minute. Engines started. Cars pulled away. Nora stood in the quiet front room, half expecting the cottage to reject her for turning people away. Nothing happened. She went upstairs and slept for 7 hours. When she woke, she built rules. Coffee 3 mornings a week, Thursday stew only, with 30 bowls reserved in advance when possible. Rooms paid before check-in. Weekly guests signed a page listing price, dates, and what happened if water or weather made a room unusable. No unpaid storage, no mystery favors. Every exchange went in the notebook with a dollar value, even if no money changed hands. She added her own labor to the weekly costs. The first time, the numbers showed a loss. She raised coffee by 50 cents and stopped including breakfast with rooms. Tessa helped her price laundry. Lavon found inexpensive sheet sets online and made Nora calculate how many stays each set needed to survive. The twin room reopened first. Martin returned on one of his credited nights and helped Nora fit new drywall over the damaged section. Craig patched the smaller cracks one Wednesday while Melanie held the ladder. Nora paid for supplies. Craig accepted 2 Thursday dinners for labor after Nora wrote down the value and made him agree it did not purchase an opinion about selling. The brass room took longer. The new mattress went on a payment plan. Nora painted the repaired wall herself and left a pale streak across the ceiling that only bothered her when she looked directly at it. Janelle returned as promised and declared the streak charming. It looks unfinished, Nora said. It looks honest. That's what people say when they don't want to repaint. With one room occupied most nights, Tessa's $80 a week, coffee and stew, the cottage could cover electricity, supplies, taxes, the pressure tank payments, and a small roof fund. It could not pay Nora enough to leave the motel. It could not rescue Melanie's house or Tessa's business. It could not become easy, but it could continue. Nora wrote that at the bottom of the page. Continue. The following Thursday, both sisters arrived before the stew crowd. Melanie brought the repair estimates again. Tessa carried a folder of unpaid catering invoices and the bill for a replacement cooler. Nora looked at the folders, then at their faces. So, this is a meeting, Tessa sat. Melanie asked. You agreed. I agreed to listen. Melanie placed her estimate beside Nora's notebook. The foundation contractor needs a $6,000 deposit. I don't have $6,000. I know. Tessa set down the cooler bill. $4,800. Nora looked at her. You said you weren't asking me to sell. I'm not. Then why bring that? Because Melanie said we should all put the actual numbers on the table. Melanie opened the property description from the first folder. If the cottage sells, even in its current condition, there would likely be enough to pay off Nora's repair debt, make my deposit, replace Tessa's cooler, and give Nora money for an apartment. An apartment, Nora repeated. A secure place to live. I have a secure place to live. The ceiling fell on your guest. One part of it. Nora. No. Melanie closed the folder. You haven't heard a price. I don't care what the price is. That's irresponsible. No. It's an answer. Tessa pressed her palms against the table. Mel, she said, no. We're family. Which means you can ask, Nora said. It doesn't mean my no becomes a negotiation. Melanie's face flushed. Mom never intended for one property to matter more than the rest of us. Mom left it to me because it mattered. You don't know that. Neither do you. She would not want me to lose the house, and she wouldn't want Tessa's business to fail. She wouldn't want me working myself sick. Mom wanted incompatible things all the time and called me the one who'd be okay. Melanie stood. I am trying to save our family home, and I am trying to build mine. The words hung between them. Tessa looked down. Melanie gathered her papers with shaking hands. Then don't ask me for anything when it falls apart again. I haven't. You will, maybe, and you can say no. Melanie stared at her as though that possibility had never occurred. Then she left. Tessa remained seated. Do you want me to go? She asked. Nora looked at the catering folder. Do you want me to sell? Tessa took a long breath. Some days, yes. The honesty hurt, but it did not insult her. And today? Today I think if I save my business by taking your home, I'll hate the business. Nora turned the stew burner lower. Outside, the first cars began pulling in. Tessa stood, tied Carolyn's apron around her waist, and reached for the stack of bowls. They served 30 people without speaking of property again. The last customer left at 7:20 carrying 2 bowls stacked beneath a paper plate. Tessa locked the door and leaned against it. I used to think Mom was disorganized, she said. Nora carried the stock pot to the sink. She kept fondue forks through 4 presidential administrations. She also knew exactly who wanted dark meat, who couldn't eat onions, and which hospital department forgot to send final head counts. She knew because she did everything herself. I know. Tessa untied Carolyn's apron. Flour and stew had softened it at the waist until it folded along the same lines their mother's body had made. I can't keep doing the business that way, she said. Nora turned on the faucet. The pressure tank answered with a clean, steady rush. What way? Like saying no is a failure of hospitality. Nora looked at the closed sign. Tessa smiled faintly. You learned faster. My ceiling had to fall in. I'm hoping for a less structural lesson. They washed bowls together. Tessa planned to drop the largest wedding packages, sell equipment she rarely used, and concentrate on office lunches and small events. It meant less revenue. It also meant fewer emergency employees, fewer rented ovens, and fewer nights standing inside a walk-in cooler trying to remember why Carolyn had accepted a retirement banquet for 200 people at $11 a plate. Melanie will say, I'm shrinking Mom's business, she said. You are. Helpful. Smaller isn't the same as failing. Tessa dried a bowl. You believe that? Nora looked around the cottage. I have to. Melanie did not answer either sister's calls. Tessa left messages anyway. Nora did not. She told herself she was respecting what Melanie had chosen, though silence felt suspiciously like the family tradition she had spent months resenting. The first frost silvered the ditch before Nora filled the roof fund halfway. Cold changed the cottage. Coffee customers lingered near the stove. Wet coats crowded the hooks Walt had installed. The pines behind the house blocked the worst wind from the west, but dropped needles into every gap around the windows. Nora learned to place rolled towels along the sills and to close the brass room when the temperature fell too low. The old heater could warm 2 guest rooms or the front room comfortably, but not all 3 without making a smell like scorched dust. She wrote that into the weekly calculations. She also wrote down her hours. At first, seeing 46 or 52 beside her own name made her defensive. The cottage needed work. Rooms did not clean themselves. Stew did not emerge from the pot because people told heartwarming stories about Miriam. Levon made her assign each hour a dollar amount. You don't have to pay all of it yet, she said over the motel desk. But you have to let the business know what it owes you. The business is a building. Then it can sit there and feel guilty. Nora began taking a small amount each week. Some weeks it was $50. Once it was $12. She put it in a separate envelope marked Pay, because writing her own name felt dramatic. Coffee remained closed on Sundays. Walt tested the rule every third week. "You're awake," he said through the window one cold morning. "That isn't the sign. I see the pot. The pot is also resting." He held up a bag of donuts. Nora opened the door, took one, and closed it again. She heard him laughing all the way to his truck. Tessa's business narrowed instead of collapsing. She sold the unused chocolate fountain, 2 warming cabinets, and 4 crates of fondue forks to a restaurant supplier who asked why any company owned so many. "My mother feared scarcity," Tessa told him. "The money covered half the cooler. She financed the rest and kept renting cottage space twice a week. She paid $80 even when a holiday week required only one morning." Nora never mentioned the difference. On Carolyn's birthday, Alma came after closing. Nora had made the rosemary version of the stew, though Thursday was still 2 days away. She filled 2 bowls and set them at the table beneath Miriam's postcard. Alma tasted hers. "Carrots are better. I cut them smaller." Carolyn won. "That feels unlikely." They ate while wind pressed lightly against the windows. "Why me?" Nora asked. Alma looked up. "The cottage. Why did Mom leave it to me? You'd have to ask her. I'm getting tired of the dead having the best excuse in every conversation." Alma folded her napkin in half. She talked about it once. Nora waited. Last October. Miriam had gone upstairs to lie down. "Carolyn and I were washing dishes. Mom washed dishes here. She criticized me while I washed dishes. Does that fit better? Yes. Carolyn said Miriam wanted the cottage to remain open after she was gone. I told her a house couldn't assign a person a life." Nora's spoon stopped halfway to the bowl. "What did Mom say?" "That the house had been assigning Miriam a life for years." "That sounds miserable." "It wasn't always. But your mother understood the danger." "Then why hand it to me?" Alma looked toward the price board, the schedule, the notebook beside the cash box. She said Melanie knew how to arrange things, and Tessa knew how to make things impressive. She said you noticed what people needed before they asked. Nora stared into her stew. "That's not a gift," she said. Carolyn knew that too. "Did she?" "She said you had spent your whole life being useful and apologizing for needing anything in return." Nora's throat tightened. Alma continued gently. "She hoped you might make this place work without letting it use you. That's a very generous interpretation of leaving me a damaged cottage. It may have been selfish too. Thank you. She knew you needed somewhere to live. She could have left me the house. Yes. Or money. Yes. Instead, she left me a lesson with plumbing. Carolyn liked practical demonstrations." Nora pushed back from the table and carried her bowl to the sink. Anger moved through her without finding one clear target. Carolyn had seen what her sisters saw. The dependence. The years in the spare room. The buckets Nora held while everyone else made decisions. But she had also seen the cost. That almost hurt more. Did Miriam know Mom planned to leave it to me? I don't think so. Miriam left the cottage to Carolyn. What Carolyn did afterward was hers. So, Miriam didn't choose me. No. Nora let out a breath she had not known she was holding. It was a strange relief. She had spent months feeling watched by a dead woman she barely remembered, as though every price increase or locked door might betray her. Miriam had not selected Nora from a distance because of some mystical resemblance. Carolyn had made a flawed, practical choice among her daughters. That felt less like destiny and more like family. Snow exposed every weakness in the cottage, but caused less damage than Nora feared. The tarps held. The heater complained without quitting. Guests canceled during bad weather, and Nora learned not to spend money she had only expected to earn. By spring, the roof fund covered a permanent repair to the road-facing section. Not a whole new roof, not even half. A small local crew replaced damaged decking around the chimney, installed new flashing, and re-shingled the slope that had lost pieces in the storm. Nora watched the final payment leave her account and felt both proud and nauseated. The pale streak remained on the brass room ceiling. Janelle said it now looked historical. Tessa said it looked like Nora had painted with a mop. The cottage continued. Melanie's silence continued too. Tessa saw her occasionally at Carolyn's house and reported only practical facts. The foundation had been stabilized with a loan. Craig had done much of the interior demolition himself. They had taken the condo off the market and were renting it for a year, rather than selling immediately. "She asks about you," Tessa said one morning, while slicing celery. "Then she has my number. She asks how the rooms are. She could stay in one for $60. Nora, family rate is 70. Tessa set down the knife. "You're doing the same thing." "What thing?" "Waiting for the other person to prove they care by coming first." "I went first for years. Not with Melanie, with everyone. That's not the same." Nora wanted to dismiss it. Instead, she cut the celery too hard and sent a piece across the floor. Tessa picked it up. "Carrot behavior," she said. Nora laughed despite herself. Carolyn's death anniversary fell on a Thursday. The coincidence felt less like a sign than an administrative challenge. Thursday meant stew, and the date meant none of the sisters could pretend they had forgotten. "We should do supper," Tessa said. "We already do supper, for Mom." Nora stirred dressing into chicken salad. She'd complain about the rosemary. Make both. She'd complain that making both was wasteful. She'd eat from both pots to make sure. That was true. They planned to close regular service after 6 and eat at 7 with Alma and Walt. Nora resisted calling it a memorial. Memorials involve programs, folding chairs, and someone telling a flattering story that omitted the most recognizable parts of the dead. "Invite Melanie," Tessa said. "You invite her. She ignores my calls with less passion." "That sounds like a qualification. She needs to hear it from you." "No." Tessa did not argue. She simply looked at Nora until Nora became annoyed by the accuracy of her own silence. The following afternoon, Nora drove to Carolyn's house. The foundation work had left a strip of raw earth along one side. The dining room windows were covered from inside. Craig's truck was gone, but Melanie's car sat in the driveway. Nora knocked. Her sister opened the door, wearing dust-covered jeans and a respirator around her neck. For several seconds, neither spoke. "I'm not selling," Nora said. Melanie's face tightened. "Did you drive here to remind me?" "No. I wanted to get it out of the way." "Congratulations. The roadside of the roof is repaired, I heard." "From Tessa?" Walt told someone at church. "Of course he did." Melanie almost smiled. Nora looked past her. Plastic sheeting divided the front hall. The house smelled of cut wood and plaster dust instead of Carolyn's lotion. "How's the foundation?" "Stable. Expensive. Mine too." This time, Melanie did smile, though it disappeared quickly. "I'm sorry I said not to ask me for anything," she said. "I didn't." "I know. That's somehow worse." Nora put her hands in her jacket pockets. "We're having stew tomorrow after closing," she said. "For Mom, 7 o'clock. Melanie looked toward the dining room. "You don't have to speak," Nora added. "You're allowed to be angry." Recognition passed through Melanie's face. "That's from the postcard." "Yes." "Did you rehearse that?" "A little." Melanie leaned against the doorframe. "You got the part where you make your place sound generous and mine sound cruel. I didn't mean it that way. You never do." Nora nearly left. Instead, she said, "I'm sorry I acted like your house wasn't a burden because it was the burden you wanted." Melanie looked at her. "I was angry that you got what looked valuable," Nora continued. "Then when it hurt you, I thought that proved something." "It didn't." "No," Melanie said. "It did. It proved Mom was consistent." A laugh escaped them both. Melanie went inside and returned carrying the bent photograph Nora had seen years earlier. Carolyn stood on the cottage porch in a yellow dress, her arms folded. Miriam stood beside her with bright red hair and one hand lifted, caught mid-sentence. Neither woman smiled. Their shoulders touched anyway. "I found it behind the kitchen drawer," Melanie said. "Mom must have pushed it too far back." Nora accepted the photograph. "She kept it," she said. "She kept everything badly." "Are you coming tomorrow?" Melanie stared at the two women in the picture. "I don't know." Nora did not push. At 7 the next evening, the photograph stood on the mantel beside the brass bell. Walt brought rolls. Alma brought a jar of rosemary tied with string. Tessa wore Carolyn's apron and complained that Nora had cut the carrots inconsistently. 7:15 came. Melanie's chair remained empty. Nora reached for the ladle. Headlights swept across the ceiling. A car door closed outside, but whoever had arrived did not come in. Then the porch bell rang once. Nora opened the door. Melanie stood on the porch holding the yellow recipe box with painted strawberries. The ceramic rooster was tucked beneath her other arm, its chipped red comb pressing into Carolyn's raincoat. Her eyes went to the sign beside the window. "The bell is not a toy," she said. "I read the rules. You still rang it. I wanted to see if you'd enforce them on family, especially family." Melanie looked past her at the table. "Am I too late?" "The stew's still hot. That wasn't what I asked." Nora stepped aside. Melanie came in. Tessa stopped arranging rolls and stared at the recipe box. "You brought the inheritance weapon. It was in the kitchen." "The kitchen is yours," Nora said. "I know." Melanie set the box on the counter beside the stock pot. "That doesn't mean everything in it has to stay there." She placed the ceramic rooster next to it. The bird wobbled, threatening to throw itself onto the floor, then settled. Walt touched 2 fingers to his forehead. "Good to see you, Mr. Rooster." "You know that thing?" Nora asked. "Carolyn brought it here once. Miriam said it looked judgmental, so Carolyn took it home." "That is judgmental," Tessa said. "It's his primary feature." Alma pulled out the empty chair without comment. Melanie sat. For a few seconds, nobody knew what to do with their hands. Then Tessa pushed the rosemary pot toward Nora. "You serve. Your cottage." Nora ladled stew into 5 bowls. She filled Melanie's from Carolyn's pot, hesitated, then added half a spoonful from Miriam's. Melanie watched. What was that? Compromise. It looked like contamination. That's what compromise looks like in our family. Walt tore a roll in half. "Mostly tastes like rosemary." "Stay out of it," all 3 sisters said. He buttered his roll. They ate. The first several minutes were occupied by the stew's practical failures. Nora had cut 1 potato too large. Tessa had overbaked the rolls while reorganizing the oven. Alma claimed the carrots were finally correct. Walt complained that the coffee was unavailable because Nora had closed the urn at 6, then accepted water after she threatened to send him to the gas station. Melanie reached for a second roll. "Mom would say these are dry," she said. "They are dry," Tessa replied. She'd say it after eating 3. She believed criticism prevented calories. Nora laughed. The sound loosened something around the table. Melanie looked toward the photograph on the mantel. "Was that yellow dress the one Nana hated?" "Yes," Tessa said. "The warning sign dress." Carolyn stood in it beside Miriam, not smiling. Nora had looked at the photograph for most of the afternoon, searching for evidence of whether the women had just arrived or were about to separate. "You can't tell what they felt," Melanie said. "No," Nora agreed. "I keep trying. So do I." Alma set down her spoon. Miriam liked the dress. Melanie glanced at her. "Did she say that?" "She said Carolyn looked like sunlight." Tessa's face changed. "What did Mom say?" she asked. "That Miriam was being dramatic." "That part, I believe." Alma smiled. Then she wore the dress the next 3 times she came. Melanie looked back at the photograph. "She wanted Miriam to like it," Nora said. "She wanted to prove Nana couldn't tell her what to wear," Melanie replied. "Both can be true. That's inconvenient. Most of this is." They finished the first pot. Tessa brought the second to the table, instead of leaving it on the stove. Melanie traced a scratch in the tabletop. "I've been angry at you." "I noticed," Nora said. "I kept thinking Mom gave you something personal and gave me debt. She gave me debt too. That wasn't the part that bothered me." Nora waited. Melanie folded her napkin into smaller and smaller squares. "You found people who knew her. You found stories. Every time I opened a wall at the house, I found mold. Tessa found fondue forks. 6 crates, Tessa said, 4 of which are now someone else's burden." Melanie ignored her. "I thought you were turning this place into proof that Mom loved you differently." Nora looked toward the cash box and the price board, the repaired wall upstairs, the serving window Miriam had once kept open. "Maybe she did love us differently," she said. Melanie's eyes lifted. "Not more," Nora continued. "Not better, differently. She trusted you with things she thought needed preserving. She trusted Tessa with what she built. She trusted me with something she didn't know how to finish. That sounds flattering when you say it. It wasn't flattering when the plumbing stopped." Tessa leaned on one elbow. "The business wasn't flattering when the cooler smelled like electrical cinnamon. And the house wasn't flattering when Craig dug a trench around it," Melanie said. "No," Nora said. "But we kept comparing the labels instead of opening the boxes." Tessa looked at the yellow recipe tin. "That metaphor seems aimed at me. It's aimed at all of us." Melanie unfolded her napkin and flattened it again. I'm sorry I tried to make your answer temporary. Nora knew exactly what she meant. Sell, and they would all be okay. Sell, and the cottage would become money, which could be divided more cleanly than grief. I'm sorry I enjoyed being right about your house, Nora said. You weren't right. I knew it needed work. You didn't know how much. No, and neither did I. Melanie's mouth moved into a small, unwilling smile. Your ceiling did make a strong argument. It lacks subtlety. I'm also sorry I made you take your things through the garage. That was mean. I know. Craig didn't need the room. No, I knew that. I assumed. Tessa sighed. This family could save incredible time if we admitted what we knew before making each other say it. Neither sister thanked her. Melanie reached into her raincoat and took out a brass key. Nora recognized the old house key by the strip of blue nail polish Tessa had painted across its top years ago. I changed the locks during construction, Melanie said. This is the new back door key. Nora did not take it. I'm not moving back. I know. I have a home. I know that too. Then why? Because you shouldn't have to knock at the house where you held every bucket. The phrase landed between them. Melanie placed the key beside Nora's bowl instead of pushing it into her hand. Nora left it there for the moment. Tessa stood and carried empty bowls to the sink. I would like it recorded that I also held buckets. You complained the whole time, Nora said. Complaining is not abandonment. Alma's gaze moved from Tessa to Melanie, then to the photograph. No, she said, it isn't. The room quieted again, but this quiet did not feel empty. Nora took the photograph from the mantel and set it in front of Alma. What did Miriam call my mother? She asked. Carolyn? Always? When you girls were here, yes. And when they were alone, usually Carolyn. Did Mom ever call her anything else? Alma rubbed one thumb over the opposite knuckle. Not in front of me. Melanie stared at the photograph. So after all those years, she never called her mom. I don't know what she said when no one else was listening, but you think she didn't. I think Carolyn believed a name could give Miriam something she hadn't earned. Nora remembered her mother taking the bent photograph away. Someone who lost the right to be named in this house. She named everything else, Tessa said. Every container in the freezer, every drawer, every person who owed her a serving platter. She believed naming meant ownership, Melanie said. No, Nora said. I think she believed it meant permission. Alma nodded. Miriam had honored that boundary. She had accepted first names, hidden visits, and granddaughters who called her the red-haired lady. It had protected Carolyn's anger. It had also turned 3 adults into strangers inside their own history. Nora looked at the woman in the photograph. Miriam, she said. The name did not change the room. No light shifted. The cottage offered no approval. It was simply a woman's name, finally spoken at a family table. Tessa put down the dish towel. Miriam, she said once. Melanie pressed her lips together. Nora did not wait for her. The invitation mattered. So did the right to refuse. Walt rose and began collecting bowls. I called her Miriam every week for 20 years. Feels wasteful to make a ceremony now. Alma gave him a look. What? He said. She also called me a stubborn old fool. You were 47. I was advanced. The laughter came easier this time. They cleared the table. Tessa washed. Nora dried. Walt took out trash without adding it to the notebook. Alma carried the rosemary jar into the pantry and placed it beside Carolyn's jars of cinnamon. Melanie opened the recipe box. The original index card still sat behind slow cooker meats because Nora had returned it after the title incident. Carolyn's division remained in square handwriting. Melanie, house and contents, except personal items listed. Tessa, Vale Catering, van, equipment, active accounts, recipes. Nora, Roadside Cottage, Old Route 16. Everything there. Tessa read over Melanie's shoulder. She could have used 2 cards, she said. She could have used paragraphs, Melanie replied. She could have stayed alive long enough to explain, Nora said. Nobody answered that. Nora took out the card and turned it over. The back was blank. For one reckless second, she wanted to amend it. Add the mortgage, cooler, pump, roof, silence, anger, and all the labor omitted from Carolyn's clean division. She wanted to write that Melanie got the room where Carolyn died, Tessa got the recipes she could not interpret, and Nora got the woman no one was allowed to name. Instead, she returned the card to its place. Tessa found Carolyn's chicken stew recipe near the back. The card said, only chicken, enough stock, carrots small, potatoes not too soft, cream at end. Useless, Tessa said affectionately. Nora took a blank card from the box. She wrote both versions, Carolyn's on one side, Miriam's rosemary on the other. Exact amounts, 30 bowls, cost per pot. What could be prepared the night before? What had to wait? At the bottom, she added, make less if fewer people reserve. Do not cook from guilt. Tessa read it. Mom would hate that. She can complain privately. Melanie picked up a pen. Under Nora's last line, she wrote, rolls burn at 375 if Tessa is talking. That happened once, Tessa said. Twice, Nora replied. Tessa took the pen and added, Melanie eats 3 anyway. The card went behind soups. Alma and Walt left at 9. Walt took the dry rolls. Alma kissed Nora's cheek and told all 3 sisters they had talked enough for 1 year. At the door, she paused beside the photograph. Miriam, Melanie said. The word was quiet. Alma turned. Melanie looked at the red-haired woman rather than at anyone living. She should have tried harder, she said. Yes, Alma replied. Mom should have told us. Yes. I don't forgive either of them. You don't have to. Melanie nodded once, relieved by the absence of instruction. After Alma left, the sisters carried coffee to the porch. The road had gone mostly dark. Crickets sounded from the ditch. Headlights appeared around the bend, swept over the cottage, and passed. Tessa sat on the top step. I may rename the business. Nora looked at Carolyn's apron tied around her waist. To what? I don't know. Something that doesn't make every order feel like a test I'm taking for a dead person. Melanie sat beside her. Tessa Vale Catering. That's imaginative. You already own the shirts. Tessa considered it. Practical. What about the cooler? Nora asked. Financed. Loud only in a normal way. I'll keep renting here through fall if that works. It works. Melanie looked at Nora. When the brass room is ready, I can photograph it. It's ready. Not with your phone. Properly. How much? Oh, invoice me. Melanie shook her head, but she smiled. Fine. They did not solve the house. Melanie and Craig still had years of payments. Tessa's smaller business still frightened her when the calendar had empty weeks. Nora's roof fund had returned almost to zero after the spring repair, and the untouched slope would eventually need replacing. The inheritance had not rescued any of them. It had only made each sister responsible for deciding what to keep, what to repair, and what burden no longer deserved to be carried in its original form. Tessa went upstairs to sleep in the twin room. Melanie took the brass room after insisting she would pay. Nora wrote, family, no money, no argument in the notebook. Then, because Miriam's system was not hers to repeat blindly, she crossed it out. Melanie, room in exchange for photos. Tessa, room in exchange for breakfast and no commentary before coffee. She went to bed with the old house key on her dresser and the cottage keys beside it. At 6, the porch bell rang. Nora came downstairs to find Walt outside with an empty cup. Despite it being Friday and therefore an approved coffee morning, she opened the door. Behind him, early traffic moved along old Route 16. The repaired roof held the clear morning light. Upstairs, floorboards creaked as her sisters woke in rooms that had once hidden their mother. Walt raised his cup. You open? Nora turned the sign toward the road. Yes, she said, but coffee costs $3 now. He groaned and reached for his wallet. Nora let him in.